Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and The Fool.
Remember that time we were late for school? And, we were fairly late for school when we were both still going to the elementary school.
Yeah.
And, our dad we were all running around trying to get our school stuff together and get our backpacks and winter gear on and whatnot. And we just gotten up late. We were running late. And then our dad started doing the dishes. He just ran into the kitchen and started frantically doing this giant mound of dishes.
I sort of remember. It's not super distinct in my mind.
I just have nightmares about that kind of thing. It's like, do the thing. Okay. But then there's a little thing in the way and you're like, okay, for example, what made me think of this was you were saying, do you want to get ready for the podcast with getting a drink of water, going to the bathroom, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And by the time you do all the little tasks, suddenly the day's gone and it's...
I actually do have a sort of different dream or nightmare, which is, so go do something, but I need my gloves. And so I go looking for my gloves. And a whole bunch of things happen while I'm looking for my gloves. I keep looking for my gloves, and by the time I find my gloves, it's nighttime. We can't go do the thing.
So in book 4, I think, of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
What's her name? The other main character that
With the mice?
Yeah. She they do a viewpoint of her from an alternate Earth.
Yeah.
And she's this very successful journalist who wants to become a TV show host in New York because she's the top of her local town, but she wants to go to New York and become a TV host there.
Yeah.
And she it goes on about her memory of in the past where she was at this party and there was this guy there with 2 heads or something. And he said, do you want to come with me into my spaceship and we'll go on adventures, which is how she gets introduced to the story in the first book or the second book whenever she arrives. But she said, yes, I'd love to, just let me get my bag. And so she goes into the bathroom and spends a bunch of time looking for her bag, and then she does her makeup up a bit and so she'll look nice for him. And she gets she puts a bunch of stuff in her handbag, and by the time she gets back, Zaphod Beeblebrox is gone because he got sick of waiting for her, so he just went in his spaceship and left.
Yeah.
And so when she's doing this radio thing, she's at a bar. She's just thinking her life is one series of bad choices after the other. And the news host says, hey, do you want to come on, do the rehearsal early for your job? Yeah. And she says, yes. And they say, do you want to grab your bag? And she said, no. If I've learned one thing in life, it's that you never go back for your bag. So she goes, does the interview. She fails the interview because she left her contacts in her bag. And so she can't read the teleprompter. And so she fails her interview. And so it ends with what she learned from life was that there are times when you should go back for your bag and times when you shouldn't. And life gave you no way of distinguishing between them.
Yes.
And, but yeah, that is literally my biggest nightmare, is just the series of events that go on and on and on and on. And I think what it is a combination of our parents.
Yeah.
So what I think it is our dad is very last minute, stressful, always trying to cram one more thing into the day, very disorganized, and always behind schedule, always panicking, always rushing.
Yeah.
And like I said, the dishes thing, always trying to cram that one last thing in before you go and do something else.
Yeah.
And then our mom is hyper regimented.
Mm-hmm. So
it's everything's the same every day. You do this, you do this, you do this, which means that if it's, say, 4:30, okay, supper's going to be an hour and a half, can't do this, this, and this, and can't go to a friend's house, because there was also come back home for supper type thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was enforced or if I just thought it was enforced. I'm not actually.
I think you thought it was enforced.
Because
it was more make me aware if you're going to be here or not.
And I felt bad whenever I didn't come home for supper.
Yeah.
And looking back on my life, we had that episode way early on about regrets.
Yeah.
That might be my biggest one looking back, is thinking that was something I had to do.
Yeah.
Because I chucked away so much for that. and I don't think it was in any means expected of me, and I just did it because I thought it was.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Romney once had a criticism of me that you do stuff because you're afraid of getting in trouble, and I took offense to that, but he's right in a sense of I did stuff because I thought it was what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, sure, that's good of a kid. Yeah, you do what's right, except nobody told me to do this. I just thought that's what they wanted from me. It's similar to when we went to Disneyland and I didn't want to go on the rides because I thought it'd be too expensive for our parents.
When you have the ticket and
yeah. And so that's where mind reading comes into, like, mind reading, don't do it because you'll be wrong.
Yeah.
Don't try to do stuff for other people. Just do what you want for yourself and hope they are doing the same so that they can tell you when you cross a line.
That's a funny perspective on the mind reading of, like, what I was going to say before that you brought up is we're sort of the duality of the two divides of you're more towards mom or I'm more towards dad in some ways on that fact of, like, the come home's like, oh, just phones, like, can I stay longer and stuff. But on the mind read, so you're like, don't try a mind read. That's sort of your philosophy in some ways. And mine is, you never know what's going on in that other person's head. So give them a bit of allowance, like, just because there could be a lot more going on in someone's life than you think. Like, oh, that teacher, he's a terrible person. He's so mean to his students, and I'm sort of like,
yeah,
you don't know what's going on in his head. There could be a little bit more to it. He could be trying to, like, correct the mistakes of his past by being more harsh to his students because his teachers were, like, too lenient. It's like, you just don't know. So
I actually disagree with that because that's how I operated for most of my life, is giving people slack. And the problem with giving people slack is you can't feel righteously angered by them. And righteous anger has a place. And anger is important. And you should stand up for yourself and not. So now, of course, those aren't necessarily opposites, right? I've created a bit of a false dichotomy there.
Yeah, there's a point, like, especially where the person crosses the line and you do get righteously angry. Like, if someone's actions outspeak any justification I can give them.
Well, I don't see, the thing is, you can justify basically anything. So what I would say is you can punish people while sympathizing with them, or you can, and that's more of a power system, but you can slap down people, you can push back against people while still understanding their position.
Yeah, so I'm saying you can do that, but I'm talking about if, like, when you talk about so someone, like, snaps at you. Yeah. And it ruins your day. Yeah. Now, you can say to them, hey, that snapping at me, it wasn't very great. Like, why on earth did you do that? Or you can approach it in a bunch of different ways.
There's a way to approach it. I can get into it.
You can approach it. But you can also, to basically mitigate the snapping at you, you can go, well, okay, there's stuff going on here, obviously deeper than it appears.
Right. I think you can do both, though.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that. I am saying that you can do both. So it's deeper than it appears, but also I am going to go, hey, don't snap at me.
Hey, that was uncalled for. Yeah. And in your mind, you can go, they had a bad day, whatever. Yeah. But
I'm saying, so you can make sure it doesn't happen again, and you can also mitigate the impact it has on you. That's basically...
You can weep for the child they were and still put down the monster they've become. Yes. That's in Garrett P.I. Yes. Which is a great line. I love it. Mm-hmm. Now, how you can address something like that if you think the person's a reasonable human being, which...
I think most people are.
I'm not sure. But what you can do is you don't say, that made me feel, you made me feel. You don't say that. Yeah. And what's really interesting is there is a correct way to go about a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of complaints because it is out there, like in psychology and just in general knowledge to a degree.
Well, then we learned the I statements in
right,
school.
So what I'm getting at is it wasn't taught in school, right? That's what the complaint is. We had a teacher at our school who taught these things. Yeah. And...
Was that Mr. Darling?
Yeah. Yeah. And the more I think about that, the more I think, wow, good on him, because he got it right. He wasn't. It all seemed very lovey-dovey, huggy, hippie stuff back then, but he was right. So now I didn't understand why he was right. So it might not have been as useful as it otherwise would have been. Yeah. But he said, "Say I." He called them I statements. Yeah. So I feel sad because you did this. Yeah. Which is that's true.
The actions that happened made me...
No.
No.
I feel sad because you did this. Being sad was my choice.
I feel sad because these actions happened.
Yes. So you are the person in control.
Yeah.
If you say, your actions made me feel sad, you are saying the other person is responsible for your actions. And do you know what that is? That's borderline.
Yeah.
Also known as insanity, right? So people aren't responsible for your feelings. However, you can inform them about your feelings, which I don't entirely know the utility of. Come to think of it when I put it that way. Well, no, here's the utility. Sometimes people aren't aware of the effect that you're having on them. And so you can say this to them. You can say, I feel sad because you said that. And then that person can take that information and say, get over it.
Yeah.
And they can mean that as your friend.
Yeah, so here's a more reality way thing, like a different perspective, is you see a snake with yellow and red stripes.
Yeah.
You know that has a poisonous bite.
Yeah.
By telling someone, I feel angry because you keep poking me, they can know that they could get bitten if they keep doing that. So you're letting them know of the pitfalls that exist.
But their anger is their fault.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be responsible in saying, get over it.
Yeah, well, you can say get over it.
But what you are being informed of is that this person, let's say that person's insane and they should be able to handle getting poked.
Yeah.
They're still letting you know that they're crazy.
Yes.
And so you back off because they're crazy. Not necessarily because of what they said, but because you know they're crazy. So the thing about honesty and truth is it never... Okay, there's this is our Kant stuff we talked about ages ago. But in interpersonal relationships, it doesn't damage the relationship. Because what happens is, as long as both people are being honest, if only one person is being honest, then the other person will feel hurt and drift away. But then you're kicking a dishonest person out of your life, so win-win. Yeah. So what happens is you say, this makes me feel angry, and then your honest reply is, what's wrong with you? Then that can make the relationship move forward.
What's wrong with you? I do not like being poked. Do it again, and you shall die.
Right, and so then you know that this person's just But if I say, what's wrong with you then you can say, look, this is who I am. And then I say, well, I don't want to deal with that. And then you're both happier.
Yeah.
And it's harsher and it's scary. But I was thinking about, so there's this Mark Manson article called Just Kiss the Girl, I think it's called. And it's about when to kiss a girl, basically, at what point. And he basically he gives a bunch of situations and he says, just kiss her. That's for all the situations.
Sorry, I'm just... My thoughts are going on borderline assault.
Well, there is that aspect to it. And especially if you're autistic, it doesn't help at all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more to make you overcome fear is the point, right? For most normal people, let's say. And also to say, if you're wondering if you should kiss them, you probably should. That's sort of the... and the thing about assault is it's kind of overblown most of the time, in that you try to kiss a girl and she reacts and she, like, let's say, slaps you, or she just goes, creep, and goes... That's unfortunate, but it's not like anyone was trying to maliciously control another person's body. It was a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings happen all the time. And so it's not the end of the world. Now, I mean, you could get fired from your job and starve and die, so then it could be in a way. And if your job is like the only person that knows how to maintain the nuclear silos, then it could literally be the end of the world. But it's...
Sorry, that just got very disturbing of interpolitical, like, inter-office politics related to people in nuclear silos. I do not like that. It reminds me of the book series I'm reading where it's the secret agents that are basically dealing with Cthulhu. But because it's written by a British author who's probably dealt with the government positions, there's a ton of petty office politics going on. And so it's like...
About the most important stuff out there.
Yeah, these eldritch horrors are going to eat our brains. I want a promotion, though. And if you fail to deal with the eldritch horrors, then you won't get the promotion and I will. So I'm going to actively sabotage you. So
the American police can be like that. They really don't like it when people work in each other's jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. And so they will hide information from each other or block each other, and they'll prevent... So if you're a serial killer, changing states or changing counties can be an effective way to avoid getting caught, because if they compiled information, they could catch you. Yeah. But if you just change counties, they might not work with each other.
You force police to work together, and then you get...
But they often don't.
Yeah.
They butt heads. But of course, if you're doing big enough problem, then someone up higher is going to go, you're working together and you're going to like it because we need to stop this. So, yeah, so the idea of the kiss the girl is just, even if it goes wrong, at least you took your shot, sort of thing.
At least you got to kiss a girl.
Well, no, because sometimes, like, her reactions might be fast enough, right? No, that is a terrible way to think of it.
I know, that's why I
That is assault.
Yes.
If that is your goal, that's assault.
Yes.
If your goal is to get a kiss, that's assault. If your goal is to advance something, that's something else. However, I was thinking about that just yesterday or today even. And I was thinking, there is another option here where you just say, can I kiss you? And you think, well, that takes all the charm out of it. But at that point, then you're being vulnerable. If you're vulnerable with someone, that is an advancement in of itself. And then you are moving to a next step, either direction, where they say no or yes.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what my first girlfriend asked me, was, can I kiss you? And it's a good thing she did, because she thought we had been dating for a month or something.
And if she tried to kiss you out of nowhere, given your reactions at that time, like your reflex at that time, you might put her in a headlock.
Yeah, it's not necessarily good or fast or ninja-like reflexes. It's more like my reaction is to just get rid of the thing that's in my face.
Yes.
Yeah. So, actually, I screamed, actually, even after I said yes to her. Because she moved her face towards mine, and I was just like, bah! And I did yell. And it freaked her out. She jumped back, and she's like,
what's wrong with you? I have a little brother.
I'm not sure.
He was close to my size.
I think it was a combination of things. Yeah. I think there was nerves involved.
Yeah.
But also just a face right in mine. It's like, this thing's about to bite me or headbutt me.
People close their eyes, I think.
It could be. It could be. Also, you hallucinate if your perception doesn't change. So if you like stare at a wall or you're in darkness.
Well, I remember when we were in Japan, I stared you down for possibly 10 minutes. Like, I'm saying possibly 10 minutes because it could be anywhere between 5 minutes and an hour, because you lose perspective of time when you stare someone down for more than a minute. And it does mess with you.
Yeah, I had a friend, we just locked eyes for like 10 minutes and it was weird.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
Yeah, there's a reason why people like look away and a whole bunch of stuff.
But you actually hallucinate. Like, we started seeing dragons and stuff. Yeah. It's like the easiest way to hallucinate. But easiest in terms of you don't need to buy anything, but it's hard in terms of willpower.
Yeah. Like,
it's pretty easy to just jab a needle or pop a pill. But like to stare at someone for 10 minutes, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was thinking all you have to do is just talk to the person, right? And say like, hey, can I kiss you? And then you can have a conversation. It's like, well, that ruins everything. Well, no, because now you're being honest with each other and you're having a conversation. And that bonds you in a way. That brings you closer together. What were we talking about before that? It was to do with
being late and nightmares.
Yeah, and just honesty there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the divide between them. Well,
yeah.
But
I think the nightmares from that mix of this. Oh yeah. So going back to the regimented, actually, if that's all right, or if you.
Well, this is related to that. A problem that I find existing with me, and I've talked about this with some people of So you might laugh at it, and this is like part of the thing of like me saying I hate being sticky. I mean, people like laugh at me, it's like, oh, you're sticky and messy all the time. And I actually have a deep dislike for uncleanliness, messiness, like messy rooms, messy situations. I really, really don't like that. However, a lot of things. Yeah, so you're giving me the eyebrow. Give me the. Yeah.
Can I just grab this walnut shell and hold it up as Exhibit A, Your Honor?
And.
That's been on this desk for a year?
3.
I rest my case. No further questions.
No. There is to this, because... So that's where it is supposed to be. And actually, before in the past, before you rifled around and just the stuff on my desk, it was actually in a very certain spot.
So you're OCD.
Yes. Probably. I don't know. But... So I can live in a messy situation because I think I have that sort of thing if it's too much effort to clean and also it's too daunting to clean. Because if I'm going to clean, I want it to be perfect.
So you know what that walnut is, Connor?
It's a dragon.
That's not a dragon. That's not a walnut. That's a gateway to hell.
Yes. No, that... Well, no, there was actually parts of a half
And
that
if
could
my
stick
memory
together.
serves... Oh, okay.
It's gone, yeah.
Well, the Apple core or whatever it was is gone from the...
That's been gone for years. And also, people change over time.
Yeah. They advance from apple cores to walnuts.
Walnuts don't decompose.
We'll have you on cocoa beans in 4 years' time.
But I actually...
Smooth pebbles.
I do like order, and so I get upset with my own living situation. I was like, it's out of order. It's such a mess. It's out of order. I think a lot of people get that it's such a mess. But I think I take it too far. As I accept my own mess, but then I'm at someone else's house, and it's like, oh, their house is so messy. This is
But
disgusting.
if you don't like the mess, why not clean it?
Because it has to be perfect, and there's other things I want to do.
Right, so give up on your... you have to give up on your notion of perfection then. That is the only option.
Yes.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yes,
And
but it does have to be acceptable, and currently not acceptable, and so I have to say, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be acceptable.
And that's just something that takes practice.
Yeah.
And you just keep working on it over and over again. Speaking of mistakes of things we'd rather be, actually. Well, no. Actually, I want to talk more about the
Order.
Order,
Yes.
yeah.
Actually, that's a different weird, ironic duality. A lot of times, the feminine is chaos, and the masculine is order. But reflecting on it, our mom is like the pinnacle of order, and dad's kind of the pinnacle of chaos in some ways.
To an extent.
Yeah.
However, well, maybe it's the nature of chaos and order, but I would say our mom is a lot more fragile.
Yeah.
So, but that could be the nature of chaos. It's a lot harder to disrupt chaos than it is to disrupt order.
Yeah.
Because there's not much you can do to chaos.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to my friend whose mom is a programmer as well, like our dad.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how similar she seemed to our dad. And he was saying, it's just programmers, man. There's something wrong with them.
Honestly, I find myself time and time again interacting with computer science students. It's like at the D&D club at my university, it was computer science students. With a lot of my friends, computer science students. This group of people I interact with online, computer science students. Like, wait, all these people I'm interacting with right now are programmers.
It's all about efficiency, is my theory. Like, they think in terms of efficiency. And so they destroy their lives in the name of efficiency, and they don't actually gain the efficiency.
Yeah, and then also, you've noticed these days a lot of programs are actually quite messy.
So, with the order, so it's like, okay, it's 4 o'clock. Well, then you have a snack, and then, it's 4:30, so you can't go to a friend's house anymore, right?
Yeah.
There's not much time. And then it's 6, it's supper time. And then you can't do much because by 6, supper's over at 6:30, let's say. You maybe have some homework to do, and then 8:30 comes around and it's bedtime. Yeah. And so your day is over by about 4:30 because your choices of freedom have left at that point. And so the chaos and the order combined there comes to the point where, there's always something you have to do, but if you do those things, suddenly it's 4:30 and the day's over.
And I think we both actually really do experience that still. Just the... I don't know if you call it trauma or not, but that regimentation of So if I have something to do in a day, like, okay, so we're not certain if we're going to call you in today, but we have some boxes to move. It could be in an hour, it could be in 3 hours we call you in to do this. And I can do nothing until then because it's like...
Well, that happened to me today with the podcast where I knew you had something to do beforehand.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure when. And then you came here and it's like, okay, he'll do the thing. And then the thing just takes longer and longer and longer. And it's like, well, I can't really do my own thing right now.
Yeah.
Because I have to be on call at all times. So that's why I try to avoid all jobs that need you to be on call.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who does on-call work, and we can be out like playing frisbee golf, and he'll get a phone call, and he'll say, okay, I'll deal with that in an hour, and he'll come in and whatever. And he's got the right mind for it, and good on him. Mm-hmm. I could not do that because
that's why I stopped that thing in Riverdale.
I was on call when I was a landscaper, and I hated it because I was working like 20 hours a week maybe, and I was making more money than all my friends who are working full-time because it's great pay.
Yeah.
And the job was great. You're outside, beautiful weather, or rain, but well, you don't work in the rain, so beautiful weather basically only. And boss is great. He would do things like he would he'd say, hey, you want to go to this restaurant? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I don't want to pay. He's like, I'll pay. I was like, oh, well, I got my own lunch. You don't have to pay. And he's like, we're going to the restaurant. So, and it's, well, I'm not sure. And he's like, we're going to the restaurant. I'm paying for you. And we're going to the restaurant because you're on company time. So I'm going to pay you while we're sitting eating in the restaurant. Or another time, there was this guy that owed him like $3,000 that he saw. And he's like, okay, we're following that guy. And so he started driving his truck after the guy, just following him around town. I was like, are you sure you should be doing this? He's like, you're on company time, no questions. And so he was paying me to help him stalk this guy, basically. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go confront him. So he's like, come with me. So got out of the truck. What am I, your goon? What have I gotten into? So they went out and they had to...
The landscaper mafia.
Yeah. So we had... Oh, this guy was a delivery truck driver.
Yeah.
So he was going everywhere.
Yeah.
So we got out and he confronted the guy. And he just had me there. It's like just standing there really awkwardly.
Yeah, especially you're... Like, as options of goons can go, like...
Well, he's small, too.
Yeah, I know.
I'm taller than him.
Yeah, but he's wiry and got that crazy energy.
But, yeah, so then he went back in the truck, and he said, did I go too far? And I was, no, I thought that was really reasonable. I was like, good, that's why I had you come with me. I didn't want to... I wanted a second pair of eyes to make sure I didn't go too far. So, oh, okay, very reasonable. Or we would drive to a different town, for a couple hours, and he'd pay me the whole time. So, great job. But the fact was that I didn't know if I was going to work until the job started.
Yeah.
And so every day I was hoping for it to rain, so I knew I had the day off. Because that was the only time I had guaranteed time off, was if it was raining.
Yeah.
And that just kind of ruined, like, oh, it's good weather, dang it. Now I have to sit around and do nothing until I get a phone call telling me if I'm working today or not.
Yeah.
And it could come at like 10 in the morning or 8 in the morning, or it could come at 2 in the afternoon. So yeah, it is definitely something to... And I think what compounds it even further is our daylight savings. Because I noticed that when I wake up, I don't feel... I have troubles digesting food even. I don't feel great in the morning. Like, I'm awake, but I don't really feel like I get much done.
Yeah.
So I lose about 2-3 hours before things start working. And then I just pick up steam throughout the day. And by about like 9 at night, I'm ready to go and do stuff. And that's when I go to bed.
Yeah.
Like I turn off all screen type things at 9:30 and I go to bed at 10:30.
Yeah.
So, but I have noticed that if I shift my schedule to be in line with time, which is 2 hours off,
Yeah.
I feel like I have so much time in the day. I wake up, I feel ready to do stuff. I'm doing stuff. It gets around 9:30 and I go like 9:30 real by the sun, basically.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, that was a good day. I'm done. Next day. So I do think daylight savings is a huge part of it. And I was talking to my friend about this, and I was saying, it's kind of crazy. Imagine listening to the government instead of the sun to dictate your life. Like, how stupid and crazy is that? And somehow everyone goes along with it, myself included.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. The government over the sun. And why everyone does it is because everyone else does it.
Yeah.
And you can't get a job properly if you don't follow that. So
And then you have that weird kooky shop that opens at the odd hours because it's run by someone like you.
I would definitely, if I had my own shop. I think my goal would be, if I can choose my hours in a job, to go from like 10:30 to 7 or something.
Yeah.
So I can just simulate that for myself. And the great thing about that is I don't stay up very late in a sense, but I have friends that do. However, if I shift my time zone, then it seems like I'm staying up late to them.
Yeah.
And so it works better for everyone even. So that is my goal for the future. And if I could become a writer full time, which is like very long term goal, may never happen. But if I could do that, then I could choose my hours definitely. And then the only annoying thing would be everyone thinking, "Oh, he's a writer. He's not busy. I'll just stop by and see how he's doing."
Yeah. Well, on that matter, I was actually thinking about how I handle YouTube stuff, and it's like, well, oh, my friend wants to come over so I can say I'm open all week, or there's this thing, and then, okay, yeah, I can, like, oh, I really want to do this right now, so I can then do my work, like, later in the evening, always shunting and moving about. And so I came to the realization, like, no, I have to say I'm doing from this time to this time. And all else, it's like, no, I'm working at that time. It's like, oh, but you're just making YouTube videos. Like, yeah, but that's when I do that work.
And more than that, I had a friend who, she said this great thing where she said, same friend I stared at for like 10 minutes. Like we locked eyes with for 10 minutes. Ooh. She said, scheduling time for yourself to just do whatever you want within still means you're busy.
Yeah.
So she basically said, I don't know what the schedule might work out to be, but let's say 5 hours a week, you're busy just doing your own stuff, whatever that is. Or it might be 10 hours a week, or 40, or 1, whatever it might be. But if you are, let's say you just got this book you've been looking forward to, and you're like, I'm going to spend all afternoon reading this, and then someone phones and says, hey, can you do this for me? You say, sorry, I'm busy, because you have chosen that time for yourself. Yeah. I have no idea how to transition to this, but it's a correction from a few episodes ago, so I think we need to do it.
All right.
We talked about late-stage capitalism, and it didn't sit quite well with me later because I was thinking I feel like I strawmanned it a little bit, so I wanted to define them better and get into that a bit better.
Yeah.
And explain it to you better, because you were the one asking about late-stage capitalism and whatnot. So, and I talked about how it's not... What really... triggered me into doing this, into like going more in depth into it and getting my ducks in a row a bit clearer for this, was someone pointed out that when you point at like China and you say, look how communism failed, the socialist response is always, that's not real communism. But when someone says something like, oh, look at this, look at capitalism, it's ruining America, you have medical companies charging exorbitant prices to their customers that they can't possibly hope to pay. And they say, well, no, that's corporatism. That's not capitalism. And that's what we talked about last time, right? I talked about how that's corporatism, not capitalism. So I think I might have gotten that wrong because, I think I did call it corporatism, right?
Yeah, probably.
So corporatism is organizing a society into cooperative corporate groups. So you say, you are the farmers, you are a group. You are the builders, you are the merchants guild, whatever it might be. So it's essentially creating flat hierarchies. So they're not hierarchies, flat classes essentially. But you're disrupting actual classes because everyone who's a computer engineer is a computer engineer, not the CEO, the whatever. They're not the top computer engineer. They're part of possibly the CEO class, or they're just the manager sort of thing. Yeah. So it's fascism, essentially. Corporatism is fascism. And so you organize society into cooperative corporate groups. So I guess you could say you are the wholesalers organization, you are the pencil sellers, whatever it might be. I'm not entirely... This is going to be a theme throughout this explanation. Don't come to me for advice on economics. Don't take anything I say entirely, especially the last thing. But this will be more accurate than my mess that we did last time. So what I was talking about was corporatocracy, which is when the government represents corporate interests. So that's where Disney keeps changing copyright law by just lobbying the government, for example. And that is more the complaint of that I was aiming for. But that complaint doesn't actually dismiss the concerns of late-stage capitalism. So, because government representing corporate interests is obviously bad, but even if they weren't, you would still have them like dumping sewage into the communal drinking well just because it was cheaper, right? So what late-stage capitalism is exactly that. It's the idea that eventually everyone in a position to do so will try to maximize profit at any cost. Hierarchical gaps will grow out of control and become impossible to bridge. And the criticism of late-stage capitalism is that this cannot continue forever. Because you're going to get to the point where there's like 3 people that have all the world's money, and they're just poisoning the air and the water to break in profit, and everything else is falling apart. So the counter-argument to late-stage capitalism is that's not capitalism, that's corporatocracy, because it isn't necessarily corporatocracy. That is just a flaw of capitalism. However, the benefit of capitalism is that supply and demand can be self-correcting. If a company like EA keeps doing evil things again and again and again, eventually, theoretically, the customers will stop giving them money and they will fail. CD Projekt Red lost a huge amount of money with when they released Cyberpunk, and I think they have recovered, so it didn't but if Witcher 4 fails, then maybe the company goes under, who knows. They're already struggling with GOG, so like they have always been struggling with GOG. But that could be the nail in the coffin. They're not as big a company as EA, so they don't have as much wiggle room to make mistakes. And I'm trying to think of an example, like I guess Sega maybe. I'm trying to think of a company that really just collapsed because of their poor decisions.
Well, what happened to the East-West India company?
Oh, the Dutch East India Company?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually. And
I mean, relatively, Hudson's Bay does not control North America anymore.
yeah, but I think that was more... they didn't really ever do anything
Because
wrong.
markets outgrew them.
Yeah, I don't think they ever had customers revolt against them. Like, they did a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like, they were the ones that sold the pox blankets.
Yeah, cover up Bigfoot.
Yeah. I don't think so. I don't agree with that video Bob Gimlin did. But I think that... we are fairly certain that they did purposely spread smallpox to kill natives, which is awful on its own.
Yeah.
But I don't think that ever cut into their bottom line as far as I'm aware. I think it was probably more just interests changed and fur became less relevant. Also, that is a self-correcting mechanism. They
Fished or farm.
They over-trapped, basically, and so they lost a lot of their stuff that way. They're still a very big company today, so... Yeah, I'm trying to think of... And the problem is there's a lot of companies where they... See, in my ideal world, I was thinking about this the other day. When a company like Apple is shown to use slave labor or break some law, like Apple was shown to violate some privacy law, right? Yeah. So they got a $15 million fine from a class action lawsuit. Which $15 million is the cost of doing business for Apple, right? Like that isn't... That's like that's like a normal business. They break a desk and they're like, oh, we'll order a new desk. They don't want to spend the money.
Yeah.
But it's the cost of doing business. Desks are going to break occasionally. You're going to order. So for Apple, it's like, oh, we're going to get caught violating these people's privacy. But we make, $15 million. That's just the price of doing business. It doesn't do anything to Apple. And so I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, if a company is shown, like, obviously you want to be a bit lenient because people make honest mistakes. Sometimes they accidentally violate privacy. It does happen. Yeah. And, maybe give them a second chance. But when a company like Apple repeatedly violates privacy purposely over and over and over again, in my ideal world, the company would be forcibly destroyed. Like, all assets seized, all people in any position of management at any level stuck in jail, like for life or something, right? Like you are destroying the values that uphold society. That would be my sort of ideal world. And I was thinking about it and why that wouldn't work. And why it wouldn't work is because then no company would go to your country.
Yes.
That is why it doesn't work. And that's the exact same thing why countries like Bangladesh were so slow to put in child labor laws. Because if they put in the child labor laws, the clothing companies just move to a different country.
Yeah.
And so the only way that countries like Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh eventually get these labor laws is when they all kind of simultaneously agree to put them in.
Yeah.
So for my ideal company destruction model to work, all countries on Earth would have to agree to, we will destroy a company if it tries to do anything.
And there's also the secondary level of that's very abusable via corruption of you could just save on these things and then you could seize a very wealthy company as government and basically nationalize it without...
Well, I wouldn't want this government to get the money.
Yeah.
Because this is the other thing about late-stage capitalism, the criticism. It's very similar to communism, where their criticisms are entirely valid. Their solutions are not. Because the solution to corruption of massive entities is not to create the biggest possible entity
and have it take everything
and have it own absolutely everything. That is not the solution, because that is what a non-capitalist society is. It's the worst of all worlds.
So when you're saying this company forcibly detonates from the inside, it just goes to everyone?
That would be sort of my idea. Or maybe all people affected, like the civil what's that called, the civil lawsuit.
Yeah.
You have these people they're getting pennies, right? They're getting like $300 each for having, I think in this case it was their phones purposely destroyed or something. I can't remember what it was. Yeah. But they're maybe making their money back after many years in stress and inconvenience. Maybe a few of them pull ahead a couple $100. But they're not, they're not set for life or anything like that. Not that they should be necessarily, but it doesn't feel like justice, let's say. So maybe, everyone that was hurt by Apple gets an even split of the company or something like that. or all of Apple's money has to be, I don't know, given to Microsoft. Like, give it to the nearest competitor.
Give people the stocks. The company still runs, but they all get stocks.
And then that would create a really interesting environment where companies would want to be the most virtuous they could so that they could get Apple's money. Right? Because, oh, this company's going to go down. Look how corrupt and bloated they are. And I'm next in line for their money. The crown is mine. But,
do you think false virtue... so there's like false virtue, the illusion of it.
Right.
Which is you're saying, I'm virtuous.
Yeah.
And you're virtue signaling.
Yeah.
But then there's people like the hegemon of Earth from Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Where he pretended to be a good person his whole life.
Yeah.
And so he was a good person. Like, do you think that false virtue of that sense is virtue?
Well, it's interesting because with the categorical imperative and Kant's ideas in general, he isn't using anyone. What you could say he is essentially the same thing as someone who has fetal alcohol syndrome, right? Taking advice from a trusted friend that these values are what society upholds. And if a person with fetal alcohol syndrome did that, you would say, good on you, right? Like, you are doing what you should, and to put, that's just my extreme. But when a person chooses a moral framework, even a changing moral framework, they are saying, I'm not entirely sure what's right, but this is our best guess, so I'm going to do my best to uphold this. Which is essentially what Peter was doing. He was saying, this is what people think is best, and I will uphold that. So he's not using people as a means to an end, unless you could say he's using virtue itself as a means to an end, with that end being having the most prosperous earth possible. So all he is attempting to do is do the most good in the end, right? Yeah. He just doesn't care about the people that he might hurt, but he is still trying to do the best for them.
Yeah.
It's like, I've seen it in 2 or 3 stories now, virtuous psychopaths. It's still quite rare, but I've seen it in a few stories now.
Are they lawful evil?
No, they would be, what would they be? True neutral, maybe?
Because veterinary is lawful evil.
Maybe. I don't know if I'd call him evil exactly. Maybe lawful neutral. Because he's not trying to hurt people or... He lives fairly simply. He doesn't amass hordes of wealth and whatnot. It's not like he's doing it for selfish reasons, really. He just doesn't care about hurting people. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that veterinary is necessarily evil. But, so yeah, the virtuous psychopaths I've seen in stories, there's one in Lightbringer where a thief is escaping, or an assassin or something like that. And he pulls out his bow and he shoots through a crowd and hits the assassin and kills him. And someone's like, how'd you know you'd make that shot? And he looks at him and says, I didn't care if I missed. They're like, oh, this is the guy we have working for us?
There's Kelsier.
Yeah, I guess so, in a way, yeah. He just wants to win, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't think of Kelsier. And then I'm reading Worm, and there's a guy in it called Regent, and he's actually a supervillain, but he's a decent guy. And basically his thing is he's already done all the evil things out there. Like, he's already raped, he's already murdered, he's done all this stuff. And he feels like, yeah, this doesn't make me feel better, so I'm just going to hang out with my friends and have a good time. And I'm going to help them, and I'll save the world if necessary, because then I can keep having a good time. So he's kind of a weird case. But he was also, this is where you can understand people, he was really messed up as a kid, so he kind of, that's when he did the rape and the murder and whatnot, because his dad made him do it, basically. So you can sort of say he turned over a new leaf, in a sense. But he doesn't feel emotions. He doesn't really care about people. Yeah. So it is, so he's kind of another one of those virtuous psychopath types. And they're interesting because they're scary, but it's also like the scary guy that's on your side. Mm-hmm. They talked about this in the Dresden Files, where when Darth Vader finally joins the fight against the Emperor, everyone's like, yeah, now the scary guy's on our side. And it's something in people seems to, at least I definitely feel that, like, yeah, I like this. Like when the aliens come to go back in time and kill all humans on Earth. And so we get the only person that knows how to fight off time travelers better than anyone to defend us. And we have Hitler on our side. And See that Saturday morning breakfast cereal?
Yes.
Yeah, where time travelers from the future are killing people on Earth, so on like present day Earth, so they have to go back in time to get the only person that knows how to fight time travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why the communist argument for communism doesn't work as a counter argument to late stage capitalism, and the fact that the Dutch have been around as long as they have, which we talked about last time, shows that the system appears to be self-correcting because Netherlands is still going.
Yeah.
Or it at least takes longer to fall than the Netherlands have been around. Maybe we are at the end now, but we weren't back then. The other thing that people make an argument for is that governmental regulations, if enforced or if enacted in different ways, like instead of the crazy copyright laws we have, or instead of monopolies being allowed in Canada, essentially, we could have proper anti-monopoly laws, and we could have proper. The other thing is every time you implement a regulation, you are actually preventing new companies from joining the space because the established companies can afford to pay the regulations.
Yeah.
But new companies, they can't get a leg up and they can't start. So you might say, well, it's perfectly reasonable that you need an electrician to inspect a house before you install solar panels, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's a governmental regulation. But what that does is it means no one can get into the solar panel game. Like there's some kid that just knows solar panels in and out. But he can't afford to hire someone to... he can't afford to hire an electrician to go over a house before he installs a solar panel. So this kid can't get into the solar panel game, whereas a big solar panel company like Solar City, like Elon Musk owns, can just keep doing it because that regulation costs them nothing. So a lot of times what companies will do is they'll just petition the government for more safety regulations to prevent competition from arising. And so governments can allow or disallow corruption just by virtue of their existence.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's another failure of capitalism in a sense, because you could say, well, if you had the freest of markets, then that wouldn't be a problem. Get rid of all government, laissez-faire economy, everything's solved. But then you get the situation where the companies are just dumping their waste into the rivers and the sewers because no one's stopping them. And if you say, well, people wouldn't buy from those companies, people still buy from Nike and Apple, and they still buy from plenty of companies that you just don't know about because you can't research everything. It's exhausting. Or you buy from them because there's no other option.
Yeah.
And like there is companies to this day that are still dumping stuff and burning, slashing forests inefficiently. There's companies that are poisoning everything. And we still buy from them because we just don't care on a sense. So the question then almost becomes the same one with democracy in a way where, well, actually, no, let's not go to the democracy for now. But it's a problem where do you say that in an ideal world, capitalism is the best, therefore we should work towards it. That's the exact same argument for communism, right? In an ideal world, communism is the best, therefore we should work towards it. So do you base your morals, ethics, and philosophical and economical beliefs on the world that you wish it was, or do you base it on the world that it is?
I think you have to base it on the world that it is.
And that isn't an instantly obvious question. Like you have your decision there, and I think I agree with you. But we could very well be wrong, because shouldn't morals be based on a higher unattainable goal, like we said, like the infinite sandwich or the ultimate sandwich type thing?
That there though, so.
But the path is trying to get there through realistic means.
Yeah.
You can't teleport to the top of the... So I guess the idea would be you don't ever get to eat the sandwich.
Well, RimWorld, right?
Yeah.
So you start a new RimWorld world. So I've encountered a problem.
Right. You build your entire base before you have any resources.
Yes, and then they're constantly not prioritizing the right thing and they die. Whereas if you start a RimWorld game and you build the house for the person...
You build a little terrible hut, and so they have shelter. It's the same with Minecraft.
Yeah, and you get a source of food, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this. I'm playing Minecraft server with some friends right now, and they're sort of like going about and doing other mods and getting things set up and getting them done. And I've just set up a massive Tinker's Construct forge, and I'm thinking, okay, next I have to get the Tinker's Construct armor, because that makes you invincible. And so I'm going through I already have cobalt tools, and it's basically, I've set up this huge core building that is proven to, this is what you need to do for Feed the Beast. And other people are like, oh, I'm going to go do the star ones. Like, hey, Connor, do you have...
You're going to do what, sorry?
they're off doing like astral sorcery.
Star mod.
Yeah, they're doing astral sorcery, or they're doing mining turtles, and trying to get logic pipes. And it's like, hey, do you have ender pearls? Like, yeah, I do, because I've set up an ender farm. It's like, oh, do you have this? Yes, I do, because I have this.
Yeah, so sometimes... But I think the RimWorld example is great, because you don't... Like, with the Tinker's Construct, that might be the optimal way to play, which I don't think is the exact same point.
No.
The point is, you will make things that aren't ideal. So in Minecraft, you'll make a house out of dirt, because that's all you have. Or in RimWorld, you'll make a tiny house that's... it's not symmetrical, and it's off to the side of the world where you don't want to build your base, but you build it there because that's all you have the time to do before your colonist dies. So you make compromises to this platonic ideal, which are necessary to achieve anything close to the ideal.
Because the world's not perfect. Raiders will come along and they'll kidnap your colonists, so you need to have the spike traps set up.
So do you work towards the perfect world, or do you... So in... you know, what you could say is, like, in the real world, you can choose to be born next to a supply of water or in a mountain made of gold.
Yeah.
And you say, well, the mountain made of gold would make me incredibly rich, and I would never have need for anything. But you die when you're 3 days old.
Yeah.
Or you're born to the fresh water, then you...
I guess more context also to the Feed the Beast thing is they all built their houses, then started building stuff inside it. I built the Tinker's Construct Forge, and I did have the horrible dirt hut with a house in it. Then once I had the forge done, I built my house around that. Where they built their houses, then put the things in it. I built the forge.
Or another example, when we were playing my Wizardry mod pack, we both kind of had the issue at the start where we tried building this great big temple inside another temple. And ogres came and destroyed everything.
Yeah.
And we kept having troubles until I just decided I'm going to cut down every tree I can and build a giant fence.
Yeah.
And so I built a giant fence, and then all our problems were solved.
Well, also we had the contrast of you lived in a dirt hole and I lived in a treehouse.
Yeah. But you couldn't live in that treehouse until I built the fence.
Well, I couldn't leave the treehouse until you built the fence.
Yeah. But they could destroy the bottom floor as well, so you had to be up.
Well, that's why I was up. The house was on top.
Yeah. So when it comes to economy, maybe you can't reasonably argue for laissez-faire because people are just going to dump waste, and maybe you can't argue for capitalism because all you're doing is replacing the problematic system with one that has a guarantee of corruption.
Yeah.
So
anarchists, right? So whenever you ask the anarchists what's the end goal, so they go, "Oh, there's no laws, there's none of this," and this happens. Like the really solid anarchists, they sometimes get around this. I haven't really listened to them, but it's like, all right, so
I think a lot of anarchists are idealists.
yeah. Well, it's like there's a whole bunch of like business. So what if this one guy, like, he just beats up a bunch of people, so well, I'll gather a group of people and we'd stop him. It's like, well, you've just created police there, you just created a system.
Yeah.
You've made a rule, you can't beat people up, and anarchy is instantly gone.
Yeah, who organizes your group of people against their group of people?
Yeah.
Now you have a hierarchy. And hierarchy...
I think... So there are actual anarchists, I think, who want it all torn down, and they want utter anarchy. But I think a lot of anarchists are actually people who just want a hard restart.
Yeah, well, they want... What I've heard the criticism of anarchists, and I kind of agree with it, but I've met some anarchists that aren't like this, but it's... They want to burn everything down so that when things are rebuilt, they're at the top.
Yeah.
So they're people that they can't move throughout the hierarchy because of lack of ability or whatever it might be. And so they want to burn everything down so they can rise from the ruins as...
They want the Black Death and the fires of London.
Yeah, and then they can benefit from the loss of life and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, the Black Death and the fires of London literally changed the landscape of...
Yeah, it was great for the third of people that were around afterwards. In the Black Death's case, yeah.
Yeah, the 40% people. Well, they happened at the same time. The Black Death basically ended after the Fire of London.
So that might have even been part of the...
Well, it was a huge part because London burned down and all the close packed together people in that centre were basically dispersed.
So I think what we have right now, this weird sort of government-regulated capitalism, I think it's similar to democracy because it is democratically run, right?
Yeah.
Where... There is
dollar is a sweet, sweet vote.
There is a lot of room for corruption in it, and it isn't a system that doesn't allow for corruption. There isn't really... Monarchy, I think, is probably the best system for avoiding corruption because there's one person at the top. So you only need one person to be good, and then everything else works.
Yeah.
Of course, if that person's corrupt, it's awful.
That one person's fallible, and there's not as many checks and balances for the one fallible person.
So what democracy does, democratic republics,
Yeah.
not democracies in general, as Athens and Australia and Canada to a lesser degree show. Like Canada's not quite as democratic as Australia, but still. You can have a whole, like, there is guaranteed corruption in a democracy, essentially, because there's so many people involved. But they can't do much. Nobody can do much. Everything gets bogged down. That's kind of the beauty of bureaucracy, is that nothing can get totally out of hand.
You know, well, I was going to say, it is veterinariat and make a corruption guild.
Yeah.
Well, that's what lobbyists are. Because there's rules to lobbying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's only certain things you're allowed to do with lobbying,
and you that's not necessarily corruption in the, well, it is corruption, but what you're getting is, if you keep it, so Costa Rica, you could say, is a very uncorrupt country, because they
have no money.
They put a bunch of systems in place to be incredibly fair and help out everyone in the country. Yeah. And what they did was they drove every business that could afford to leave out of the country.
Yeah.
And that hurt all the citizens. So you could say that allowing lobbying, allowing this corruption as it might be, actually benefits everyone. Because then everyone wants to go to your country. Like, that's how Ireland makes a whole bunch of money, is they don't have taxes, and suddenly all these companies come and they pump money into the system.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people have jobs working in the offices.
And that's how the Isle of Man operates. And not the Isle of Man. Jersey, yeah. That's how Jersey operates. And companies just come to these places, and they boost the economies because suddenly everyone's spending. Because kind of the thing about economy is there's a whole bunch of people that are just sitting on savings, and the best thing for an economy is for nobody to have any savings. So the goal is to basically extract it from them. So if you have a bunch of companies there that have desirable stuff, you can get more money flowing in the economy and moving. And but like I said, don't take economic advice from me. I
like the concept of a reserve. Like in my current Ball's Brothers game, I have 300,000 gold.
So why reserves are bad is because inflation exists. Because if you sit on $100 and it's $1,800 for 200 years, it's worth $100 now. And we have this massive inflation right now where it's up to like 20 or 30% or something like that. It's going 3% per month, I think, which is about what it normally goes per year. So if you sit on money, it becomes worthless. So you need to be constantly reinvesting it, spending it, and working up. And so depressions are interesting because if you have savings, they ruin you. If you have debt, they're very good because let's say you have $10,000 in debt. Yeah. There's a massive depression. You go to your office, you go to your work for 1 hour, and they give you your $10,000. You can pay off your debt after an hour of work. Yeah. So you can buy a house, hope for a depression, and then pay off your debt with a little bit of work. So investing on debt. So that's what really rich people do. Is you have like a couple million in debt, and you have a couple million in savings, and then you're good no matter what. And it's obviously more complicated than that, but you essentially you win no matter what happens.
Gold.
So why inflation as a concept has been introduced is to prevent the problem gold caused. Because the problem with gold is there's only so much of it on Earth, whereas money, it keeps increasing. And so...
I mean, I think that's also one of the benefits of gold is there's only so
much.
No,
it's a huge problem. Because how you make money in a world where gold is the standard is you buy as much gold as you can. And then you sit on it and don't do anything. You don't contribute to society in the slightest. You don't have a business that builds spaceships. You don't have a business that provides food to people. You don't become a farmer. All you do is you sit on your dragon's hoard of gold. And its value increases constantly. Because what happens is wealth is constantly being created. Like real, tangible goods are created more and more. So every year there's more food than there was the previous year. Every year there's more, well, not necessarily every year, but in general, over a long period of time, the amount of food in the world increases. The amount of gold, well, not so much. The amount of iron in the world increases. The amount of cell phones in the world increases. The amount of material wealth in the world increases over time. But if the amount of gold remains the same, then a single piece of gold is suddenly worth more and more and more because it's the only currency you have. So that's why you print money to match the amount. So you grow a tomato, you print $1. For every tomato you grow, you print $1, and dollars and tomatoes are always worth the same. And that's kind of the ideal world where you keep everything flowing. The problem is, what?
I'm just thinking about like trees and money, and trees is the amount of money we got.
Yes, but what you would ideally have is every single resource was tied exactly to the amount of money printed.
So we have a super AI that's omniscient and can see everything at once that's being produced.
Except there is a benefit to money decreasing slightly faster than the amount of goods that are produced. Because then that means people want to go to work more because they can't just sit on their money and it stays the same no matter what. It forces them to keep adding to the system. So if you want a stable system, then you'd want that super AI system. Mm-hmm. But if you want expansion, constant expansion, then you want money to slightly devalue relative to goods over time, which is what happens.
Yeah, but then you get the problems of...
When infinite expansion hits a wall, then you have a problem.
Yeah, or when your job doesn't change with the rate that it should. And so...
But then people stop working there, and they go to the companies that do. And that's where the free market ideal capitalism thing comes in. Of course, that's not always what happens.
Yes.
And the other problem that happens is you're a landlord, you're just having a great time. The government comes in and restricts you to increasing by a set amount per year.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're like, well, then I can't afford to be a landlord. I'm just going to sell the house, and then I have to kick my tenants out, and it doesn't solve anything.
Yeah.
So that's another problem. But it can also lead to some rent being a bit more reasonable. So, again...
It sounds like we're building a tower of sticks and we're just going higher and higher and higher while it's collapsing below us.
I think it's more like we're bacteria in a petri dish and we're just expanding out like crazy because there's all the agar, and we're going like crazy. But the hope is that there isn't an edge to the petri dish, because as far as we're aware, the universe is infinite, so we should be fine.
Well, we do have to get the leap of getting off Earth, though, at some point.
Mining asteroids, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And...
draining stars of their life force.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that, where... You know what would be... So, mining asteroids, right? So what you want to... If there's an asteroid or a comet heading towards Earth, one of the things you can do is you can just paint one side of it.
Yeah.
And what that'll do is one side will be hotter, one side will be colder, and that will push it away from the... It'll push the hot side, essentially.
Yeah.
And you can move the asteroid and save Earth. But I was thinking, if it's that simple, right? Or if you have a heavy weight near it, you can tow it.
Yeah.
So what you could do to do an asteroid mining is you could just have a giant steel spaceship in space, fly next to an asteroid, and then grab it and then pull it over to your mining bay, basically.
Yeah.
Without ever touching it. You just use your gravitational well. Of course, it's going so fast that you'd have to be pretty accurate with it. So you'd probably like move it around the sun a couple times until it slowed down or whatever you do. So I was thinking about that. So you don't want to get into a orbiting asteroid mining bay at the same speed, basically.
Yeah.
You know how BP keeps having oil spills and like they cause that massive disaster in the Gulf of Mexico where they hit a thing that ruptured and didn't stop pouring out?
So there's a show called Don't Look Up. It's on Netflix. And basically, two scientists discover that this massive asteroid's heading towards Earth and no one else has really noticed it. And it's going to hit Earth, and this thing's big enough to actually destroy Earth. Not, dinosaurs are good. Like, it hits Earth, the Earth is going to explode.
Right.
So it's bad. And they're basically going to the government and saying, this thing is coming.
Yeah.
And it's going to hit us. And they're like trying to tell everyone about this, and no one's listening to them. And then people can actually see it in the sky, and it becomes a thing, and then the politician at the time is like, if I can stop this asteroid, it'll be great for my campaign. So they start listening to the person, and it's very like satirical and harsh to our society. And so they send up an astronaut with his rockets that basically blow the asteroid up and like knock it off course from Earth.
Yeah.
And then the mission gets cancelled. I'm like, why on earth did you cancel this mission? And this guy says, well, this asteroid is covered in metals that are really, really like rare on Earth. And if we could get them onto Earth, that'd be great. So I'm going to attach a fleet of mining robots to this thing. They're going to be rockets, and they're going to make it so like it orbits Earth, and we're going to mine and like break it into more usable pieces.
Right.
Of course, they wasted all that. Like, it's wasted a bunch of time trying to convince them it's real, and the election had to come along. And then this guy's like, okay, we're going to set the system up. And then the other countries on Earth are like, wait a minute, we don't want this. And so they try to send their own space things, but they're a little too late and they get sabotaged. And as mining turtles go up, and he's like, don't worry, like a few of them get destroyed. It's like, don't worry, we have redundancies. Like, we just need 36 of them to make it. We still have 50 left. And then after, So we only have 34 of them left.
Yeah.
And then the asteroid hits Earth and kills everyone. And that's how that story goes.
Just a Kafka-esque type thing. It's just I don't like that kind of story. The Kafka's he popularized it, of course. It's just the bureaucratic nightmare. Politicians all self-interested.
Yeah, it's very a Kafka nightmare.
Yeah. Although Kafka was more the system doesn't care, doesn't notice. This is more selfish people.
Yeah, this is a lot of satire on the selfishness of people.
Yeah, I don't like that sort of story at all. Oh, I hate it so much.
It's actually like incredibly focused on selfishness in people.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate either. I think people would respond pretty quickly. But no, the thing that concerns me...
Well, I think even with a case on Earth is, like, at a certain point, someone like Elon might just go, like, I have my own private rockets.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing about that is, that concerns me, is not that. I think that almost takes away from the real concern. Because that's so obviously stupid that we know what the solution is. What I think the problem is asteroids that aren't going to hit Earth at all.
But we want to mine them a little bit, so we're going to catch them in the gravity of Earth, and then they slip.
No, we wouldn't bring them near Earth. That'd be crazy. We'd have a mining thing orbiting the sun on the other side of the solar system. But we have the mining drone just bump the comet the wrong way, and it swings around and smashes into Earth. Like, that sort of thing is what concerns me. BP just makes a slight miscalculation and pushes a comet into the Earth.
You know, one of the things about... I mean, ideally, you would actually have it beyond Jupiter.
Yeah.
Because you know what Jupiter does?
Well, it absorbs a lot of hits.
Yes.
So here's the thing, though.
But it's actually real. There's a lot of space, and sure, there's a lot of particles through it, but it's really hard to hit Earth because it's such a small thing, even though it has gravity.
So there is a ring, which is perpendicular to the orbit of the planets, made of fragments of a giant comet.
Yeah.
And Earth passes through this thing twice a year. And that's when we have our meteor showers and comet showers and whatnot. And every I can't remember, it's like 100 years or 30 years, something like that, we hit a section that's a bit more dense, and there's bigger things. And that's where the Tunguska event happened. That could have wiped out all of St. Petersburg. It was a massive explosion.
Yeah.
It didn't kill anyone, because it hit Russia. But it was enormous.
Yes.
It was majungus. And
you're making up words to express how big it is.
Yes, because I can't remember. It would have killed millions of people if it had hit a city. Yeah. Easily. There was a much smaller event that happened when we were passing through this belt in Russia in 2014 or 20.
That was that really loud sound of that.
That was that thing everyone filmed on the
burning
dashboard.
thing that exploded and was really loud.
Injured a bunch of people, blew up a bunch of windows.
Caused earthquakes throughout Europe.
Yeah. That was much smaller than the Tunguska. Much, much smaller. Still didn't really hit anyone. But so it's not that unlikely because we're passing through a field twice every year.
I guess we have that field. We also have the moon, though.
Yes. But we're coming at it from... Yeah. Like, we're going through a screen, so we're getting hit constantly. The atmosphere is destroying most of them.
Yeah, having the projectiles attached to the sun makes it more likely for the things to hit us.
So something that's interesting about Saturn and Jupiter is that when they align, they create...
The stars are right.
Yes. They pull from the Oort cloud, I think it is, or the Kuiper belt, comets directly at Earth. Like, the angle lines up perfectly. And learning that made me think, wait a minute...
So the stars are actually right, and the electrons get flung at Earth.
Wait a minute. If the stars align, Kuiper Belt's super far away, right? Yeah. Or the Oort cloud, whichever one it is, I can't remember. But you could say, wait a minute, all the texts, exactly 500 years, let's say, after they align, the Earth is hit in this month by, like, a horrible disaster. Yeah. It seems to me that there's probably a lot of those things that aren't quite as extreme, right? Yeah. But you could build a very decent model of the solar system using astrological data. Like, astrology was meant to be more metaphysical to an extent. But I wonder, if you go back far enough, if it was actually like, hey, so those planets aligned, and 10 days later, like, that city was wiped out. I think there's a connection. Well, let's see if it happens again.
Well, I've started thinking about it like a laser beam, right? So the Earth's going around, and, like, all the planets line up. Yeah. And you basically got this rail gun that's pulling something directly at the sun.
Because all the gravity aligns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, it's not directly firing at Earth, like if every single planet aligns.
Yeah.
But it's going to grab a lot of stuff and pull it in.
Well, that's the thing is when you align everything,
Yeah.
Earth could be way over here the next time
Yeah.
it comes around. But it's specifically Jupiter and Saturn. They line up, at least in this. Like I don't know what it would be 1,000 years from now, but at least currently when they align, it manages to get it on an arc that hits Earth.
Yeah.
And
The stars are right.
yeah, and just learning that it's like, wait a minute, that's interesting. And I bet you could probably build a decent cycle of that. Mm-hmm. So let's say the Mayan calendar, every 21,000 years, this is when you get back into that disaster zone.
I'm just thinking about, like, this would be petty aliens, right?
Yeah.
So Dyson spheres.
Yeah.
So they have Dyson spheres and control every single planet in his solar system, so they can rocket them to move in certain ways. And so they basically hear our radio waves. And so they line up their massive system, basically make a gravity well, to slingshot a cloud of debris past their own solar system at us. And it's like, well, we have that done. And then like a million years later, their Oort cloud they fire just obliterates our solar system.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Halloween is basically when this is at its height. The getting hit by stuff like the Tunguska event and whatnot. The very worst hits. And I heard this theory that Halloween might be the oldest holiday we have, or one of the oldest. Absolutely ancient. And it's to commemorate...
Go on, I'll just say my conspiracy theory afterwards.
Well, it's possibly to commemorate the Younger Dryas event, which some theorize was a comet. So the idea being, you have this thing that comes and kills off not most life, but a huge amount, like 90% of humans, let's say.
Yeah.
And so it's the Day of the Dead. And it's also a warning, like this Halloween is the time when you want to be looking at the sky and feeling like, I don't know.
Yeah, but we wear masks, right? And we've misinterpreted primitive masks and stuff. But actually, it was gas masks because the atmosphere gets caught on fire.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
And masks are pretty freaky looking, like a gas mask, and they can be skull-like.
There's a lot of descriptions of like a second sun before the apocalypse, and that's what a comet looks like during the day if it's big enough and it's coming directly at the sun. You get like this second sun type thing, and so yeah, it's like you see the second sun, and you remember
put on
the
your
dead.
Costume and mask.
You put on your yeah,
and then you ask people to come inside.
Yeah. And you go from house to house looking for supplies.
Yeah.
But also there's raiders who will trick people. And so...
Well, you could be the person... You could be welcoming people in
that
are kind, or
sending them away.
Yeah.
And so they will retaliate violently. It's kind of a threat, isn't it? It is a threat.
Yeah.
It's literally a threat. Right. I forgot that. What a horrible day.
Well, that's... So... Conceptually... I'm trying to come up with a story... Basically, I've been trying to deal with this problem, which is basically like, the Dark One in Wheel of Time, how like this cycle comes over and over again, they have to beat him.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, there's far too many parallels with the Dark One with my main villain, and I'm trying to fix those parallels. But one of the concepts in it is he's never been killed properly. Like, he gets broken into pieces, all those pieces cause more problems than he does entirely, so you go and you gather all those pieces or you destroy all of them, and sort of like Melkor, you destroy all the pieces and he gets all his power back, and then you have to deal with the Titan of Evil, and then you kill him, and it's like, well, we have to scatter all his pieces about, so they scatter them, bury them, and they say, alright, your tradition, like, you guys have to guard this thing forever.
Yeah.
But then it becomes more pomp and ceremony than actually guarding it, and they stop pouring the anti-evil liquid on him, and so like the radiation of his evil comes out again, like the drinking stuff to stop scurvy, how it just became a tradition.
Yeah.
It's like the sort of concept, how do you beat, like, that could be Earth, is these traditions.
I don't know about the scurvy thing being a tradition, but I get what you're saying, yes.
Well, I'm not saying it's tradition, but it's like the story, and there's like, we just drink this wheat thing.
But I think everyone has always known in regards to scurvy. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
There is...
Like, if it went on long enough.
Yeah. Well, the rice farmers, I think, are a great example that love to refer to, who they have the ritual that yields the greatest rice harvest on Earth, and it's just this massive religious ceremony. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of...
I, to my own level, I actually do think that Like when we look at traditions and old things in the holidays, there is reasons for doing them. We have to
absolutely.
think about them a lot more than just, oh, it's just a holiday.
Absolutely. That is why...
Like, that's Christianity, like, accompanying, like, Easter's in it and Christmas, and, like, all those are a part of it. And really
that's not a theory, that's truth. That's why buildings built by the Masons, for example, have specific configurations. It's so that you can decipher those truths way into the future just by figuring out the ratios of the buildings. It's probably why the pyramids have those ratios of pi and are built in the center of Earth's landmass and possibly has the same dimensions as Earth on a scale that gives you the zodiac if you divide it by 43,500 something, and why the pyramids have the scale that, like, how they have the high electromagnetic radiation in them, and they're such a technological marvel in every way they're done. I think that's why they point exactly due north, why they're aligned with Orion. They are so precisely made in so many different ways. That's the sort of thing you do to say, hey, this isn't random. Like, we did this on purpose. We understood space. We understood distance. So basically what they're saying is, hey, we were smart. This is what we could do. It's the same thing with the Golden Record. Yeah. I think the pyramids might be a very similar structure. The difference being, it's a lot harder to break the pyramids than
the Golden Record.
Yeah, the pyramids were... I think that's probably part of it. They're like, let's build something that... So, there's the question of nuclear semiotics. How do you make something that 10,000 years down the line can communicate with people of that day if civilization has failed?
Yeah, make Mordor.
Well, yeah, or you build something that time can't destroy.
Yeah.
You build a giant stone pyramid. Yeah. It's just that time will not destroy. And
even the Nile moving across it will not do nothing.
And moving away from it, it's will withstand everything. And even if it gets damaged, because the pyramids are... well, relatively very damaged, but in another sense, they're hardly damaged at all.
Yeah.
But you take that, and even then, it's still pointing true north, because it's very hard to just rotate the pyramids. Yeah. They're still in the center of the landmass of Earth, or at least of the non-New World section of Earth. They're still aligned with Orion, so they have a lot going for them in terms of... Even if you knock the top off, it's still aligned true north, right? And there is a lot. Now, I do wonder, I would kind of like to do an experiment at some point. How much of that we have read into it that wasn't there?
There's always the reading, like the Bible, predicting the apocalypse by the Bible.
Yeah, that's a little different because it's ridiculous how far they go to make these extremes. Like, if the pyramid's pointing due north, it's like, well, that seems pretty obvious. But... it is off by 1/60th of a degree, I think. So, why did they miss? It's like, that's a tiny amount, but they did miss.
Doesn't the magnetic pole move, though?
No, it's pointing true north.
Nah.
Oh, and that's something else I should mention. Because you might say, true north, North Star. North Star wasn't there back then.
Yeah.
So, it was harder.
That's actually... There's two really cool historical events I like to think about that are just that are related to the stars, which is one, the North Star appearing.
Well, I think it moved.
Yeah. Well, there's one, though, so a star appears.
Yeah.
And the other one...
Well, okay, the star didn't move. Earth's rotation wobbles. Yeah. So Earth pointed at the North Star, essentially.
Yeah. So star appears.
Yeah.
That one's kind of interesting.
Star disappears.
Well, the star disappears, though, is terrifying. So...
Well, isn't there a theory about the Bethlehem star was there, and now it's gone?
Well, there's that. So the star grew very, very bright. There's another star... I can't remember when it was. It was in the medieval ages. So people basically looking up at the sky, and a few people say, oh, that star's getting brighter. It's getting brighter. It's getting brighter. It's getting brighter. And then for, I think it was a couple years, it was so bright, it actually changed how much light was in, like it was like a noticeable 1% increase of how much light Earth got at night. It was... ridiculous, like, and the star grew huge, and it was super bright, and people were like, what is the sign, what does it mean? And then it's gone.
Nah.
Because they exploded.
Yeah, it's neat when you see those tail-end events that take billions of years, but you can catch you can catch either end of them if you're lucky. It's very cool. There was a time in Portugal, in like the 1400s or 1600s or something, where a second sun was in the sky. And it was there for... several hours, witnessed by like 500 people in different areas. And it's I saw this it was like a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Where it was making fun of crypto stuff and like what do you call those supernatural phenomenons.
Yeah.
And so it showed like stuff that you can laugh at and easily dismiss, and it showed like, you know, Bigfoot, UFOs, all this, and then it said stuff that's very scientific and whatnot, and you know, there's no argument against. And then in the center it showed that one time there was 2 suns in Portugal because it had 500 independent witnesses over the course of many hours just constantly looking at this second sun.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting event. That could have been a comet. Or mass hallucination. That's the one they love to go with, isn't it? Although the dancing plague would suggest that is possible, I think. Because if it existed, I kind of wonder. Sometimes there's these crazy historical events. Maybe they never happened. You ever think of that? Might be a story.
Yeah.
Or something that we've misinterpreted.
Well, I mean, what's... So...
Like, or prions. Prions do that sort of stuff to deer. They make them backflip.
Yeah. So think about what's important to you, right?
Yeah.
Now, what you would write about history right now.
Right.
Now, think about the diametric... Not the diametric opposite of you, actually. Think about someone who's, like, 90 degrees different than you. What they would write about that's important.
Yeah.
Now, you both write this down.
One of them survives.
And it's poorly translated by idiots.
And some other guy gets it and he's like, well, okay, these people had nothing. Like, the only sport where you ran with a stick between your legs was Quidditch. These people were barbarians.
Yes.
Like, no, we a lot of our records missing, and you don't care about the same stuff as us.
Yeah.
Like, I think, for example, ancient people's astrological technology was amazing, and their psychedelics might have been fairly amazing too. And that's just stuff we've totally dismissed up to this point. Not entirely dismissed, but it's far less a part of our modern psyche.
But even the children and women working in the coal mines.
Yeah.
And how that guy's like, this is terrible.
Women are shirtless.
Well, he thought it was terrible on humanitarian.
Yeah, he thought it was terrible children were working.
Yeah, but then that didn't work to convince
so
people.
like,
these children are being exposed to shirtless women, and the women are also shirtless.
Get the children into school.
Get the children into school and get those women out of the mines.
So actually, applying modern standards on the past, we're going to finally get into something. Okay. So, Patroclus and Achilles weren't gay. Okay? Socrates wasn't gay. The Greeks weren't gay. The Romans weren't gay.
Pretty gay.
Sappho was probably gay. But
so was that Roman emperor who had his lover drown, the Greek lover.
I'm gonna say maybe not in that case, but I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, well, no one knows enough though, because he went to Greece, had a Greek lover, and then the guy drowned.
Right, except even saying that it was his lover. So the thing why I say Sappho was probably gay is she wrote poetry about women in relationships with other women.
Did she live on Lesbos?
Yes, that's why. That's where lesbian comes from. It's her. It's her fault.
Ah.
Not Lesbos, but Lesbos is in Portugal. But no, Lesbian. Sorry. Yeah, it was Lesbos. Yeah, Lesbos.
So I was just thinking about this thing I saw on Reddit as a joke, which is saying, you like men, that's pretty gay, and it's referring to women.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, you know what'd be like way easier than we have like this straight, gay, like lesbian, hetero, whatever?
Yeah.
Is we get rid of that. And we just, like, we could even just satirically use gay and straight.
Yeah.
So, a gay man likes men. A gay woman likes men.
Yeah.
A lesbian man likes women.
So, do you know what heterosexual and homosexual originally meant?
Not at all.
They meant you were obsessed with sex with either people of the same sex or the opposite sex.
Ah, obsessed.
Yes, as in you were interested in sex with these people, essentially.
Yeah.
So, we are in a time now, this is going to sound harsh, of absolute degeneracy.
Well, I was thinking, we have pride parades, but I think we also have vain pride parades.
Right, but besides that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there is a lot of that, though. But...
Yes, but the concept of sex being a thing to base your identity around in the first place, whether heterosexual or homosexual, was not something that was around a few hundred years ago.
Are we as depraved as the Victorians? Or are we more?
Well, we're kind of doing the same things. We're just in the open about it, right? So
Yeah,
no, I don't want to go too far and get into a sort of Gnostic or Protestant hatred of sex, because that
You must only wear black and you cannot roll dice.
well, so why the Gnostics didn't like sex was they saw it as similar to food, similar to the Buddhists of the devil's trap to keep you ensnared on earth. You're pursuing false pleasures instead of the pleasures of the mind.
Yeah.
So, in ancient Greece, when we look at these people, let's say Patroclus and Achilles, people say they're gay.
Yeah.
And historians don't tend to, but a lot of Redditors especially say they're gay. And they say, well, look at it. Like, Achilles was super upset when Patroclus died. And
His best friend died.
they had their ashes mixed together in their urn. And that's pretty gay. But okay, I'll get into that.
They're bros.
Yes. So, I would like to...
They're like super bros.
Yeah. If these people have no concept of friendship, and I would say something very scathing about that, but fortunately, C.S. Lewis has. So, those who cannot conceive friendship as substantive love, but only as a disguise or elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend. So, boom! Get him again, C.S. Lewis. I love this man.
That's pretty gay.
So, you friendless freaks. What?
Just my joke, you said, I love this man, and said, that's pretty gay.
Yeah, okay, so I'll get into that as well. In the Middle East, homosexuality is forbidden.
Yes.
Men hold hands, like, all the time. Like, they'll go shopping together holding hands. They hug a lot, they wrestle a lot. They I don't know, they probably sleep together, I don't know. Because homosexuality is illegal. Do you see what legalizing homosexuality has done to our psyche? It has people in this sounds like I'm against gay people, I'm not. But people in Western society, let's say, men, yeah, sorry, I think I argued with our mom about this a while ago, that men are actually more physical than women in terms of relationships and touch and whatnot. And she said, no, women are always hugging and kissing each other and whatnot. And I would argue men would, if they weren't afraid of being seen as gay. Because they used to. In the Victorian times, they did. I talked to you before about the idea of romantic friendships, which was a thing during the Victorian time, where men would sleep together. They would cuddle even at night, like keep the bed warm, that sort of thing. That doesn't happen anymore because it's gay. Oh, that's so gay. On the other side of that, I have a friend who, I don't know about you, but basically everyone I knew thought I was dating her. Because I would have sleepovers at her house. We weren't.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't a friends with benefits situation.
Yeah.
We weren't having sex. She wasn't my girlfriend. I would sleep over at my friend's house who was female. But everyone said, oh, you're dating.
What's interesting about that is I'm actually thinking about elementary school and the relationship that I had with my best friends.
Yeah.
Especially Romney, who's been on, is people like jokingly would call us gay, but some people actually thought we were gay. I was thinking about it. And a lot of teachers also, like, we're inseparable throughout high school, and like, we're always together. People get our names mixed up. It's like Connor, oh, sorry, I meant Romney, or like, they would actually get them mixed up. And it's because we basically were always there, and like, a teacher made a joke of like, Romney would go do this. Then coming around right after him would be Connor to back him up.
Yeah.
And he's like, he was sort of roasting toasties on our future, and he's saying like, Connor's going to follow Romney to the end.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, we were actually very close, and like we would play games with us. However, we had something else. Like we just called something about. Like we would physically wrestle and touch and stuff, and hang out a lot.
Bake out. It wasn't gay, but
no, not that. But like very.
But see, that's the thing. The fact that I can make that joke shows that society has swung in completely the opposite direction of being afraid of homosexuality because we allow it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Persia, they're not afraid of homosexuality because it's banned, and therefore the men hold hands and dance around, and they get to play in their pink pretty shoes.
It's not love.
Yeah, it's friendship. And I do think men are more physical because, well, the reason I think that especially is because, well, men are designed for physicality. I mean, women, I guess you could say, are designed for taking care of people, so that's pretty holy and touchy, but they're not designed for taking care of other women. They're designed for taking care of children. So I don't know. But men, you have to work together. Like,
they got the bigger arm span, more hugs.
Well, I was thinking, if you want to be hunting with someone, if you want to be fighting with someone, like you gotta be in sync with that person. You gotta trust them.
I was just thinking, wrestling is pretty gay.
Exactly. That's what our society has done. We have turned affection into homosexuality, right? And homosexuality in itself. So, and heterosexuality, let's not forget, are both over-sexualization. So the Catholic Church is against homosexuality. And people say, well, then Pope Francis, he's so cool. He's so modern. He's so progressive. But he recently apologized for the First Nation massacres that occurred in Canada. And he's like, he's so progressive. But why is he stubborn on this one point on homosexuality? The reason he is because he has nothing against gay people. But he's against them being married because you're not allowed to have sex outside of marriage in Catholicism at all.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to have any sort of sexual act outside of marriage. And inside marriage, you're only allowed to have it for the purpose of procreation. So the Catholic Church is against masturbation and homosexuality equally. If you're against one, you have to be against the other. That's how the Catholic Church works. Because homosexual marriage, the only purpose of marriage is to say this person will be the person I will generate children with. So a homosexual marriage is saying nothing. It's saying this is the person I will be with to violate the Church's only sex for procreation commandment again and again and again. Because there's another point. Why can't they be your friend? That's what the Catholic Church would say. Yeah. And people say, well, what are homosexuals supposed to do? They're supposed to marry women and have children with them. That's what they're supposed to do. Or they're supposed to become a priest and touch little boys. Like, wait, no, they're not supposed to do that. But they're supposed to become a priest and abstain from everything.
Well, so something else just going...
Although pedophilia is weird. I don't think it's related to homosexuality. It's very weird.
Taking some steps back.
Yeah.
To...
It isn't related to homosexuality, let me just say that.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
So there's two weird levels of... So in wrestling class, I was the only boy who would wrestle with the women.
Yeah.
Now there's the one level of, oh, he's a guy who wrestles with girls, so he's trying to get the upper hand and like prove that he can beat them. In the context of my grade class and how young we were as kids, the boys' class always was beaten by the girls. Like, we actually just couldn't win. So there's a different level of basically... If I wanted to wrestle people on my level because I was very big, I had to wrestle girls who were older than me because of the confidence level.
Well, was Emily one of the people you wrestled?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I had for it to be a fair wrestling within my grade, I had to wrestle people like Emily and Thea.
I wouldn't wrestle her today. Like, she's a beast.
Even Lena to an extent. Like, that was a different, like, not proper wrestling, but like certain exercises. I was the only person who would wrestle with the girls. And
let's stop saying names. Those three are very common names, but let's avoid others. Well, I'm not sure about the one, but the other two are very common. All right, anyway.
Yeah, so to that level, I was the only person that would do that.
Yeah.
And I was made fun of for doing that, not on the level of, oh, you're going after weak girls and trying to beat them in wrestling. But I was made fun of, like, oh, you're wrestling with the girls.
So, and then there's also the perverted side to it, or the lovey-dovey side, I guess, in theory.
Yeah, but I was just wrestling with them, and making one person very angry when she couldn't pin me, because she could beat anyone, and she would beat people in 2 weight classes above her. And then she couldn't pin me, and she got mad, and that was scary, because she got mad.
So... The second counter-argument to what I'm saying is, well, what about all those ancient Greeks and Romans having sex with each other? It's not gay if you say no homo. And I mean that slightly seriously. Because sex...
So just no homo, bro. Just give me someone a big kiss and then no homo, bro.
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't your bro most of the time. Yeah. It was a kid. Because...
They're all pedophiles.
No. We have see, this is why I'm talking about the modern lens, right?
Yeah.
It's not gay unless you enjoy it. That was the Greek mindset. Only women enjoy sex. Men use sex as a sign of dominance. So what you're saying when you have sex with a little boy is, I own you. That sounds okay.
That sounds also just on the level of, man, have you heard Eurydice really enjoys having sex with his wife? Yeah, he's pretty gay.
Yeah, he's heterosexual. He's gay. Like, this dude's into sex. How gay is that?
Yeah.
Right. So, and of course, so do you know why gay is gay? So the original meaning of gay, of course, everyone knows, is exuberant, happy, joyful. Yeah. But that's not what it was, ever. It very quickly became a word meaning a
pervert, or
no, like a licentious person. What do you call that? Prostitute type, but not quite.
Well, licentious is a term.
Yeah, like you were just having sex with everyone, right?
Whore.
Yeah.
A slut.
Yeah, slut's a good one. Yeah. That is what gay became very quickly. And there is a reason it got transferred over to homosexual. It was because this person cares about sex so much, they're not even doing it for procreation. They're just doing it to have fun. Obviously, they're not even pretending it's for procreation because they're doing it with someone they can't procreate with.
And then they're making it part of their identity as well.
Well, not necessarily. That's a new thing.
Yeah, well, that's it.
But when the origin got transferred, that wasn't... I don't think that'd be the case. And I don't want to criticize people for what they're attracted to, right? Yeah. So this isn't me condemning gay people. At all. This is me saying you cannot take our modern... Because here's the thing. A lot of people think the Gnostics were wrong. That sex is not just a method of debased pleasure. That it is a way to bond with someone on a much deeper level. It is a way of showing affection and care and companionship. And so that becomes something much greater than just carnal pleasure.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird because you could say that would also be the case for the non-homosexual men bonding with their bros then, in a sense. They were doing it to just be like, hey dude, you're cool, instead of them actually... But then you ask, what is sexual attraction? Because then it gets very weird. And you start wondering, because it appears that it is influenced slightly by environment. And it's a subject that's kind of a little touchy still, I think. Because the argument for tolerance, which first tolerance is kind of like, acceptance is, well, you can't demand acceptance against, but tolerance isn't the greatest thing. But you can demand tolerance. So I guess fair enough. But the argument for tolerance was, look, it's a free country, do what you want. We can't control who we like.
Yes, it is not the government's business what goes on in the bathroom.
Well, in the bedroom.
Sorry, the bedroom.
Or the bathroom, I would hope.
No, that is completely our business. We need to count your stools.
No.
You can track viruses and health and stuff by people's stools.
Yeah, but not in the bathroom, in the sewer.
But you get in the bathroom, you know who has it and who doesn't.
At that point, you might as well just...
Get it coming out!
Or like take a blood sample. I mean, at that point...
Every time you go to the bathroom, you must take the blood sample.
So, here's a thought experiment, which doesn't have a very nice conclusion. At least as we've constructed society. I think we're in an unstable position that we need to rectify. And I'm not sure which direction we want to rectify it, but here's the thought experiment. It turns out that, like every other mental thing out there, so it'd be kind of weird if homosexuality was different, you have biological markers that can be activated by environment. And this can also change over time, which is what I've seen intimations towards homosexuality leaning towards. That, because people are saying sexuality can change over time, like recently people have been playing around with the idea, let's say. that may not be like all this might not be true still, right? But but it would be kind of weird if it wasn't true to an extent.
Yeah.
Because everything else changes, and either because you're first of all saying something is caused by biology doesn't mean much. Like you can say, well, trans people have the same brain as a woman. Yeah, but you can think yourself into a different physiology. So
experiment in theater that I did with a very good instructor.
You felt like a woman, took an MRI, and you were. Bam.
No.
I bet it could be done.
So he told us to basically walk around in a circle.
Yeah.
And to project on ourselves that we're sick.
Yeah.
And like move like a sick person, think that you're a sick person, feel the aches, like all that. And he told us to do that over and over again. Like I think the guy actually has like some informal training in hypnotism just by the fact of the way he is and the training he does.
Well, he's done everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, told us go around. And then by the end of it, he's like, all right, we're done this exercise. How does everyone feel? And we all felt awful. We felt wretched.
I mean, walk in circles as well. But
well, it's like walk around the room, not circles,
right.
but walk around the room aimlessly. Like we all felt awful. And he's like, okay, now walk around, lighten your step, feel happy, feel good, pretend to be healthy, like you're lighter than air, and just do that over and over and over again. And everyone stopped feeling sick. And this is really good exercise, basically getting into characters, you think like them. But another thing you can think about with this is if you feel really sick, just think you're like healthy. And then he cheekily add, if you want to get out of work for the day and when you want to call your boss, just, or he's like sort of waiting me in school, it's like, pretend you're really, really ill.
Do you know what his job is these days?
No.
He is he's a hiring recruitment manager. Wow. Yeah, so another thing you can do is
just to get into character when you're going live about being sick.
You can smile and it'll make you feel better. I think I seem to recall that in the study they even got people to stick a pencil between their teeth to force their mouth into a smile. Like they weren't even trying to be happy. And
is that why dogs are so happy?
The involuntary change in their physiology actually made them feel happy. Or maybe pencils are just that great. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I don't chew on pencils.
I love it. It's just not good for me because like most pencils come with paint on them and you get that paint in your mouth.
Yeah.
And that's not good for you. A bunch of the treated chemicals. It like gives you sores in the mouth, and so you have to.
Well, the wood's probably treated as well, I imagine.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The wood. So you actually have to like find a proper nice stick outside. It has to have the same crunch because they got that sort of core to them that you can't bite through in pencils, and they sort of squish. So. Yeah. Willow's good for that, but then willow makes your mouth numb. So poplar's really gross, and then other trees are too prickly. It's hard to find a good wood to chew on.
A nice balsa.
Oh, balsa is actually great if you're not allergic to it.
So, I think that it's very possible that homosexuality can change over time and is environmentally changed, but that doesn't matter. Let's do a thought experiment where that is true. Mm-hmm. You can, through therapy, let's say, stop being attracted to men. Let's say. Here's another argument for that, actually. The whole fascination with... What do they call it? Traps?
Yeah. Femboys?
Yeah. Makes no sense unless there's either way more gay people out there or your tastes can change according to environmental cues. Because they're not women, right?
No.
So the whole fact that and maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it's just a big meme.
Well,
I'm not actually sure. Like
so here in a movie I watched a long time ago, basically at one point this guy says, I gave up dating women because it's too much of a hassle, and I date men.
Yeah.
Because like men are great, and it's like a whole bunch of things talk about all the benefits. And there's the concept of maybe that guy was bi.
Yeah.
But in the like film, he was straight until women were too much of a hassle, and then he became gay.
Yeah.
And that's like a lot of times movies come from a little bit of truth. And there's cases where people are saying like, done dating women, going to date men.
So I don't think. Like this is just a hypothesis, let's say. It's not even a theory, but I don't think that homosexuality or heterosexuality, not in the original terms, but in the modern terms, exist.
Yeah.
I think people want to have children and they're attracted to things that make them feel good.
Yeah.
and their environment tells them which things will make them feel better and worse. For most people, they still think that women will make them feel better if they're men, and men will make them feel better if they're women. Because it's about completion, right?
Yeah.
Men want someone to be that wall you can lean against, and women want the person that can pick them up.
Yeah.
And so they want that completion. And I think that is even shown in a staggering amount of homosexual relationships where the people seem to adopt the roles either of man or woman.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's always true, but it seems to be a huge amount of it occurs.
Yeah.
And that would suggest that so a feminine man may actually be able to fulfill the needs of a masculine man.
Yeah, well,
except that man may also want children and also may not like the self-image of it and might find women more aesthetically pleasing, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the thing of the femboy is if we go back to capitalism, is supply and demand.
Okay.
And the literature is...
Femboys, limited supply, get them all
dear.
there.
I just realized the political compass of the capitalists are attracted to the...
Yeah.
But, so...
What's the Nazis, man?
It has been observed over, time, continually now, that...
Well, like the pretty mice, I guess.
Women don't like dating down.
Yeah.
They date up.
Yeah.
But men will date across and down. And a lot more women are in education, in universities than men. And so there's a lot less availability for women.
So femboys are easier to get.
Yes.
Right.
They're way easier to get.
So I think that...
And also a femboy is more willing to accept you because they'll also date down or across.
Now I do think there's a flaw in both of our reasoning here, which is, Bob Gimlin pointed this out, which is people are attracted to what makes the species continue.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. So... But of course, our brains are so incredibly powerful, we override a lot of stuff that should otherwise be fairly obvious, in quotation marks. So, in the thought experiment, my hypothesis is correct that people are mostly just attracted to what can replicate their genes, but they're also attracted to something that fills them in some way, completes them. And you can change your homosexual impulses and your heterosexual. You can stop being a sex-obsessed fiend, let's say.
Yeah.
If that's a bad thing, because again, the Gnostics and the Protestants really hammered that in that was bad, but that might be a bit overstating it.
We don't want to Brave New World it though.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We seem to be more on the Brave New World side of things right now than because the image of a Catholic family, let's say, is of a very loving family, not a sterile family.
Yeah.
Whereas the Protestants would be a very sterile, uptight type thing. And the Catholic one seems kind of ideal because you have limitless love, but sensibly restricted.
Yeah.
Whereas, and I'm not saying Catholic as like you must do what the Catholics say. It's more of a contained model of making a relationship sacred seems to me to be a better way to go than orgies every weekend or something.
Yeah.
So, in this hypothetical scenario, you can have therapy to stop being homosexual or heterosexual.
Yeah.
And it turns out that makes you just want to be in a relationship where you can have children or not in a relationship at all, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, you also want that intimacy. So, but let's say you can eliminate homosexuality through therapy. That sounds... It's basically conversion therapy. That's literally conversion therapy. Right, so let's say that's possible.
Yeah.
Let's say conversion therapy is possible.
Right.
And it's not in a way that just leaves a person traumatized to be afraid of the...
Big, beefy men.
Yeah, well, what can happen with conversion therapy is gay men will just become afraid of men. Like, it will stop the gayness, but only because they're now terrified of men.
It's using damage to try to...
And that obviously isn't...
It's using damage to affect change.
And if the point of the conversion therapy is to make a person's life better, you're not actually doing that.
Yeah.
Now, if it's to stop them from going to a specific hell, then maybe it is helping them, even if it ruins their life. But that's... that seems like a pretty weird design decision for whoever made the hell and the rules that govern the world and everything. Except that, I guess what you could say is they put in a test, because men are really good looking, and they put... says something more about the people wanting to enforce it. But they put in this test to make men really good looking, but they wanted you to resist them. And you are so weak, you can't even resist that simple test. So we are going to have to step in and help to save your soul from hell by any means necessary, because you can't pass God's simple test. So I guess that's one way you could look at it. Not very nice, but that is a view. Okay, so conversion therapy is possible. Does that make homosexuality immoral? Because you are preventing the man from running down the streets like Persian men hand in hand. Or do you say men need to grow up and do the same thing that's always happened with freedom,
and kiss each other,
and not care about what other people might think, and just do what you enjoy? But the problem with that, to an extent, is you judge yourself.
Yes.
And there's a thing called true OCD. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I think everyone, like all mental illnesses, everyone has to a degree. What true O is it's the fear that you are something you are not, or maybe you are. So
imposter syndrome?
No.
You
constantly think, wait, am I gay? I might be gay. Like that guy look kind of hot. Maybe I am gay. I don't know, but no, I'm not gay. Am I gay? And so what it does, so the thing there's 3 most common occurrences, and as tradition, I've forgotten one. Homosexuality.
There are 3 kinds of people in this world: those who can remember the third, and those who can't.
Yeah. So homosexuality and transgenderism are the 2 most common outcomes of true O.
Yeah.
And the third one, I think it's like pedophilia. Yeah. Pedophilia, transgenderism, and homosexuality, I think, are the 3 most common as far as I remember.
Yeah.
So, and the thing about true O is it's horrifying, because you have no one you can turn to, because the only person you can trust in a decision of who you're attracted to is yourself, but your mind isn't telling you the truth, or maybe it is and you're not sure. Because that's the thing. How do you know if your mind's lying to you or not?
Yeah.
Because maybe you have... And so what true O does is it actually can kind of make you those things. So you say, oh, well, I like that guy. I must be gay. I must be gay. That must be it. So you think you're gay, and you go, and that happened to Zero, where he was raped when he was a kid, or he was sexually assaulted in some sense. And so to justify that rape, he decided he must be gay. It's not true O necessarily, but it's the same idea of I've waded so far in blood that it's as far to go forward as it is to return. Yeah. Sorry, I just had a mental image.
Well, I was just thinking of, when they're running away from the boulder, and it's like, why don't you just step sideways?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I've waded so far in blood, it's easier to go forward than back. And then there's just this guy standing on the shore right next to him, just going like the Jackie Chan, just like.
So, true O can cause these conditions. It can make you think, oh, I am transgender, therefore I have to go through this, I have to do this, I have to do this. It can make you feel, make you think you're homosexual. I don't think it can cause pedophilia, simply because you wouldn't think, oh, I don't know who I am, therefore I'm going to go through with it, because it's pretty obvious that's evil. Like, I think even pedophiles know it's evil. Or, like, they justify it to themselves, obviously. But they know that everyone else hates it. So why, if you have serious doubt, would you pursue that line of inquiry?
Well, I don't understand your love.
No, but if you're in serious doubt about the issue,
serious doubt, yes.
Like if you have true O, it means you have no idea what you are.
Yeah.
But you decide, I'm just going to go with it, or maybe you don't, but you have no idea. And you're like, wait, am I not being true to myself? Am I stuck in this loveless marriage because I'm actually gay, and maybe I should just break it and then everything will be better? That's what true O does. You're married to a woman, you've been married to her for 15 years, and you think, maybe I am gay, maybe I shouldn't be here, maybe I should get out, maybe I am gay. And it could be that something else entirely is making you unhappy, or you
maybe I crashed my car and I actually am a woman.
Took me a moment. Yeah. Yeah, but you do, like, this is a very, very common thing, which is terrifying because it's been happening like crazy. To women mostly, now. It didn't used to be. It used to be men who liked pretty things. Like, oh, man, like...
Look at that rock.
Well, no, more like, oh, man, like, tights look good, and, like, these heels show off my calves, that sort of thing. But it has transitioned hugely into women liking sports. And it's like, oh, you like sports, you must be a man. Right? Like that is, you cannot be anything but a gender stereotype now. You can't be the gentleman. I read this book. It's one of our dad's favorite books, apparently, but I couldn't get through it, so I never got to experience whatever might be good about it. It's called Magician's Pawn, book from the 70s, I think, 80s. And it's a book about this guy that learns how to be a magician. Mm-hmm. And I read it when I was 14 or something, maybe 15. And the main character, his brothers are all these like super warriors. His long line of super warriors. His dad's a super warrior, and he's just not interested. He's he likes playing with his dog, and he likes riding horses. So he likes going on the hunts with them, but it's because he likes riding the horses. He doesn't actually like killing anything, and he prefers writing poetry and just staying and reading a book and to practicing in the yard with the other men. And I thought, okay, whatever. Like, he's obviously more of a scholarly type, and he becomes a magician. So it's like, okay, so this is the more scholarly guy that his father's disappointed because he's not achieving anything the father cares about, but then he becomes a wizard. And it's like, oh, wow, cool. But that's not exactly how it goes. It's because he's gay. And sure, there's a lot of gay people out there that are... there are a lot of gay people out there that are interested in all these things. But it was so, like, gay, therefore you must like... and it was so reductive.
I was just thinking... one of the best books about addressing coming out and being gay that I've ever read, guess who it was written by?
Orson Scott Card.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, it's called Hero, and it's about a superhero who's gay.
Wow.
And...
what's wrong with that man? Why is he a Mormon?
Well, that's what I thought was fun. It is so good at addressing it, because it isn't, oh, I'm gay, this is a story. It's, he's gay. It's actually really important to the story. It affects the plot greatly. It's metaphor for a bunch of things, but it's also Orson Scott Card exploring and explaining it, and it's just so well done. Like, a huge part is the main character is a hero.
Yeah.
And he wants to do good. And it's sort of one of those worlds where there's a ton of superheroes and a ton of supervillains. And there's a supervillain at one point getting accused for murder.
Yeah.
And the main character... basically looking at this guy who's on the stand. They demasked him, and he's huge into justice, and he doesn't want like a wrong thing to happen. It's like, this guy can't commit the crime. It's like, what do you mean you can't commit a crime? It's like, the night that that crime happened, I was sleeping with him. And in this story, being gay is still societally bad because it's based in the past. And so basically he outs himself, saying like, this is impossible for him to be...
Couldn't you have just said like, we were playing poker. We were hanging out at his place. In his bedroom.
Well, I mean...
without our clothes on. It was really hot. It was also, the temperature was high.
But that's like one part of this, just that there. It's like the thing like he said basically, because he's honest.
Yeah.
He's a superhero. He doesn't lie.
And I have AIDS. That's how you know I'm gay, because that's how this has to be, apparently.
Well, given his powers, he literally can't have AIDS because his superpower is healing. And he has like super regeneration, and someone else on his superhero team has the power to give people diseases. And so how they fight people is the one guy would like hit someone with typhoid and disability, then they tie him up, and then the guy would remove the typhoid from him.
So how HIV works is it hides... Am I getting this confused with herpes? One of them ignores your immune system.
Yeah, so this guy's healing...
So super healing wouldn't help you.
No, this guy's super healing puts your body into a perfect state. Like, he can make people lose fat from healing them.
Right, okay.
Like, it's superpowers. It's not science superpower. It's superpowers.
There is no biological way for the body itself to defeat...
He doesn't heal you. He makes you better.
Right, yes. I think that is a distinction. Yes.
He makes you better.
Now, the thing about Orson Scott Card, and why I kind of jokingly suggested his name...
Yeah.
I mean, Mormons, I don't think they're actually anti-gay in the first place, but Orson Scott Card is the single best writer I've ever read at addressing complex topics.
Yes.
And also things he might disagree with, but complex topics. Like, no one else can do nuance like him. Everyone's like, oh, this guy doesn't like gay people, therefore he's a bad person, or oh, this person's like this. And Orson Scott Card, he can do nuance.
Yeah.
Like, he knows what he's doing when he... No one else addresses...
Well, one of my favorite books is A Planet Called Treason. I love that story.
I liked about half of it. The second half where he like goes 400 years into the future was a bit like, wow, you just killed off every character in the book but the main character.
That's not the second half. Well,
it's like the last 10%.
That's the ending.
Yeah.
It's to express what happened in his life.
But that's just like, geez, you can't just kill off the entire world.
Well, Orson Scott Card does.
Yeah.
He does that a lot in his stories.
You can't just wipe out an entire galaxy-spanning alien species.
Have you read Shadow and Flight? That story is depressing. Like, knowing you, I recommend you never read Shadow and Flight.
Is it part of the Ender's Shadow?
Yes. It's about Bean being in one of those spaceships that change the perspective of time, but he lives in it.
Oh, so he's just... Well, I mean...
people on Earth, people are trying to find him a cure for his giantism, so he's in that spaceship to accelerate his time perspectively to Earth. So everyone on Earth...
So I guess you never read the Ender's Game series?
No.
Because literally for Speaker from the Dead onwards...
Oh, that's what Ender does?
Yeah, Ender and Valentine get in a spaceship and they go to the first new world that people go to. So Peter's been dead for hundreds of years.
Yeah, so in Shadow and Flight, some of the Shadow stories, Bean and the girl who originally liked Ender...
Yeah, Petra?
Yeah, Petra. They have a bunch of kids in Orson Scott's Card's weird way that they basically are like given to a bunch of women, their kids.
Yeah.
And so they track down all their children throughout Earth is a story I skipped.
Yeah, they stick them all in his ship, yeah.
And, well, so they track them down, and then they genetically look for which ones have Bean's condition and which ones don't. And so the ones without Bean's condition, the hegemon Peter and her adopt, and they live together. Then Bean takes his 3 kids with their condition and puts them on the spaceship. And they go out into space looking for a cure, basically, like hoping Earth will develop a cure. And Bean's basically trying to live long enough to get the cure.
Does he die?
Yes, Bean dies.
Ah. Well, that's not the end of it. That's not the end of the world, I guess.
But what turns out to be the cure to it is they encounter Formics.
Yeah.
But they encounter Formic males,
Oh.
not the females. So they discover a group of Formic males who are basically freaking out because all the Formics are dead and they don't have a queen. And it turns out the Formic males are basically what drives the whole civilization of the Formics. Like, they are amazing bioengineers that can basically, like, they touch you and they go, oh, that's interesting about your biology. Here, have this mutation and it will change you to fix you. And so they fix his children, but Bean's too far gone, dies of a heart attack.
So every other planet that the humans and Formics aren't on in the galaxy are covered in dandelions, and that's it. And the humans, because they're the only species left, basically, besides the piggies, have no idea. The piggies live on the dandelion planets, on some of them anyways. The humans have no idea why this is, because it's very weird. Like, the only life in the universe is this one species of flower, basically, and it's just on like all the planets that can support life. And they're like, shit, okay, so the Formics existed, and we exist, and the piggies exist, but that's it? Like, what's going on? So once Ender and Valentine steal Willy Wonka's great glass elevator.
Yep.
Do you know about that?
Nope, I'm just accepting it.
Okay. They
You have to sort of accept things when it comes to Endergame.
They travel to the edge of time or the universe or space or something. And they see a spaceship, and it's not a Formic spaceship, and it's not a human spaceship. And because they're using the great glass elevator and they're going super fast, of course, they become children again. Because that's what happens in Willy Wonka and the Great Glass Elevator. The old people get younger and younger and younger, right?
Yeah, I haven't read the Great Glass
Elevator. Well, all his grandparents get in the elevator and they become younger again.
Okay.
They become like 70 and they're jumping around and dancing and whatnot. Very road doll sort of thing to do.
How old were his grandparents in that bed? Why were all 4 of them in a bed? That just... ugh!
Yeah. Orson Scott, Road Doll, I love it when he's like, here's this youth potion that makes these people like 50 years younger. They're now 90.
Yeah.
I love it when he does stuff like that. But, and they're just like dancing around like, I'm 90 again. So they become children again and they go to the edge of time and space in the Great Glass Elevator. And they come across a spaceship of this species never seen. And they get bombarded with this massive wave of viruses. And they use the elevator to analyze them. Like, this turns all life into dandelions, basically.
Yeah.
And so this species has just wiped out like all life in the universe with this bombardment. They're like, what is this, some sort of super weapon? Like, no. This is how they talk. They're a species that communicates through RNA. They send out viruses.
Yeah.
And the viruses just don't work with every other species in the universe. And so they're hailing their ship. They're just like, hey, how's it going? And just like wiped out the universe. And why that's relevant is because this all happened after Valentine died, but she's in the thing with Ender. And I think they get Peter in it too, maybe? Or Peter and Valentine share the same body now or something. And so Bean could come back is all I'm saying. Because there's more books written after this point.
Bean wouldn't want to come back.
Well, maybe he doesn't get a choice. The Great Glass Elevator does what the Great Glass Elevator does. I think what they do is they use OCD to transcend time and space. Yeah, that seems right. The crazy thing is, this isn't, like, crazy. Like, it doesn't actually seem that far out of the human realms of possibility to just alter dimensions in a way that lets us go to parallel dimensions or something that changes everything, right? Because Orson Scott Card he's not hard science fiction, but he's close to hard science fiction. This is a very possible future.
Orson Scott.
It's just the future that far in the advance seems crazy.
You know, like Black Mirror's like, ooh, this could happen to us, spooky.
Yeah.
Orson Scott Card future stuff is actually like, that's sci-fi.
Yeah, like time travel becomes a thing where you become the noodle eaters. And like all his stuff is very possible. It's speculative sci-fi, basically.
Or the tongue-in-cheek of the Mimickers. The planet where everyone tries to advance their family science because they're rebelling science.
Right,
in a planet
like
called,
treason. Yeah,
planet called Treason. But the Mimickers, that they can give you illusions that there's someone else or reality's different.
Right.
Their family is descended from politicians.
Oh yeah,
because all the main character's family is from biologists, and so they're regenerating.
Right.
And someone else with space travels descended from astrologers.
Right, they're all descended from different groups.
Yeah. And the
right.
family of the illusionists are descended from politicians.
Right, that absolutely beautiful woman's like this middle-aged fat guy, right?
Starving man who wants to eat him.
Oh, he's starving.
Yeah, he's starving on the coastline because their island's dying. They're all escaping their island because it has no resources left because it's run by politicians.
And then there's the Guardians of Iron. What's their thing? The time manipulation? Is that them?
No, the time manipulations were the people in the forest.
The Guardians of the Iron were weird.
Biologists. They were metaphysicists, I think.
But they can like warp in and out of dimensions or something?
No, they're geologists. They can travel through the earth and change the earth, and they can make the blood of the mountains run.
Right. But they just didn't tell everyone about that for some reason.
Because if treason's a weird plant that makes you do things humans normally can't do.
Right.
And they want to defend it from the colonies because they said our plant has iron, then the colonies would come back and destroy treason.
Right. Yeah, so when we look at the Greeks, it's better to think about it more as a handshake interaction of bonding. And also as a...
That is a weird secret handshake.
When it comes... But also, a lot of seemingly romantic things, like Patroclus and Achilles sharing a tent and being willing to die for each other. That's just friendship.
Yeah.
And so it's weird because I say we can't project our modern values back on them. And I think that's true. But also what we call homosexuality might have been exactly what they were experiencing back then. But they viewed it in a different way. So now I could be wrong here, but no, I'm not going to. I don't know enough to say, actually, no. But yeah, when we look back at these people, they're not gay because... What?
I don't know, your theory seems pretty gay to me.
So here, my hypothesis. Should homosexuality be looked down upon in a society where conversion therapy works? Because then you are making...
Well, it depends if you have the Christian values of marriage being only for procreation, or if you want to have children, but you also want to be with people that you love. Do you know about, what's his name? The guy who agrees with people.
Dave Rubin?
Dave Rubin.
Yeah.
He and his husband are having kids.
Yeah. Yes. Not each other's kids, though.
No. But they're having kids. In a very weird thing. That's a whole different subject to get into my thoughts on.
More like surrogate motherhood?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
But I'm saying, in a society where so hypothetically, if convergence therapy works...
Yes.
And we are not categorically of, you want to have children for marriage...
Yeah.
Then I think...
Because like
it wouldn't be evil, or it wouldn't be frowned upon. I think within such a society... you would use said convergence therapy both ways.
It wouldn't be ethical for them to have children with surrogate mothers then in that society.
No.
Because...
that wouldn't be ethical, but...
But it could be ethical for two guys who really liked each other to just be in a relationship because they liked each other.
Yes.
Which is what I would argue is what's already happening right now. I think that acceptance leads to homosexuality, and that, you know, that doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if we lose the Persian or the Victorian time romantic relationships, it does. So that's the other thing. Sexual attraction and romantic attraction are different things.
Yes.
And aesthetic attraction. Those are three different things.
There's this whole thing of the YouTuber Jaden's talked about aromantic and asexual.
Yeah.
And how she's both of those. And there is a difference between romance and...
And now I don't know her situation, but I'm going to guess she's wrong because she was or is anorexic, and that can cause hormonal problems. And achedonia, lack of enjoyment of art, let's say, pleasure, can be caused by depression and hormonal disruption.
And there's the joke... so there's two layers to this joke.
So what I'm getting at is that lack of romantic attraction. Yeah. Well, I think it's possible. Yeah. But I do think there's a whole lot of people that have... I don't think labeling yourself works. Anyways.
Yeah. So the joke, and...
She knows herself better than I know her.
I've seen this before, is someone goes, I'm aromantic and asexual. And then they become pansexual and panromantic. Yeah. And Lois here is talking about this. So what's the description of pansexual? Well, you're really attracted to the person you're attracted to.
Right.
So the idea behind pansexual is you can be attracted to anyone.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who they are. And you're just really, like, that person is the person you fall in love with. Yeah. And Callum pointed out, isn't that just falling in love with someone? Like, why would you put that label on it? Like, isn't that just what it is? And so a person who's asexual or aromantic... Well, aromantic's the more one I'm going to put. The aromantic person might not just met the person.
So I think the asexual and aromantic might, without ever changing, right? Yeah. Like, let's say that their views on romance levels and sexual attraction levels never change. Yeah. Might be what you would call a normal person. And for some reason, the vocal minority of heterosexual and homosexuals have... in the sense of people that are just a bit too much about sex, let's say. Yeah. Have taken over the what do you call those? The Overton window, the place of discussion. Yeah. Like, for example, Abba and Preach, Preach especially talks about his relationships as if they're normal. And they really do not seem normal. No. Like, the amount of women he's dated is like 40 or 50 or something. And he talks about one night stands all the time. And it's like, that isn't normal. That's really not normal. Like, I think
like Archie levels.
Well, no, in Archie, because it's always the same. It's people just trying to figure each other out. Like it's like three people.
Well, I mean, every once in a while he'll date Midge or he'll date...
but it's his friend group. That's pretty normal. But this is one night stands of people just over and over and over, and so I think that has taken over the mindset because there was the sexual liberation of the birth control pill, right? Yeah. And so people might have overcorrected a little bit from the Victorian era, and I think
God's ankle, I feel faint.
So I think asexual. So what I think basically is that labeling these things is useful, perhaps, for finding ways to talk about it, but in terms of defining yourself permanently, it's not useful because you might just be a normal person that doesn't realize how far out of whack society is.
Well, I think also the labeling comes from people. Some people really like labeling, and when the people who really like labeling label things, everyone has to know about the labels.
But I think labels are very useful.
Yes.
However, so I think, let's say Aiden being aromantic, asexual, very useful to her especially. Yeah. She knows who to talk to, she knows what to talk about. Because once you can label something, you can talk about it. If you don't have labels for it, it's like, I don't know how to even discuss it.
It's a dragon, we've talked about this fear. It's like this thing in the bushes, I don't know what it was. It was Pan, it was fear.
Yeah, once you name it, once you at least have a dragon, you can then start, what's a dragon look like?
Yeah, that's why names have power.
Yeah, exactly why names have power. And that's when you can start working towards something. And so the part I don't think was useful for Aiden was telling people about it, let's say. Yeah. Now you could say, well, representation helps people because they're like, I'm not alone. But the thing about asexuals is they don't care, right? Because that's kind of the nature of it. You don't need to be represented because it's like Yeah. Now, the only thing is they might feel like they're broken and the only person in the world like them.
Or left out because most of society appears to be absolutely obsessed.
And, I mean, they'd be right in thinking that in a sense because asexuality is incredibly rare.
Yeah.
Like, it's like 1 in 10,000 or something, or 1 in 100,000. Like, it's very rare. In theory. But then you get these weird, like, suddenly everyone's whatever. Because everyone's a thing. So I think that there was a tie-in here with...
The gays?
No, with
You want to tie in our original thing of chaos and order? And
No, I was just thinking, like, I totally... Like, transgenderism just somehow... I think it loops into the true oath... Well, it does, obviously, because that's one of the main aspects. But it's stereotyping, I guess. Yeah, it kind of links back to what I talked about when I was talking about that case woman, where...
Well,
you label everything and suddenly Okay, here it is.
I figured it out, but you can go ahead. I'll see if you got it.
We suddenly have a million genders.
Yeah.
And the reason we have them is so that we can describe emotions. Because people say, oh, I feel this and then I feel that. And so we stereotype to such an extent degree that if something doesn't fit the stereotype, we need a new word to describe it.
There's also the tie-in of, we're talking about like, two guys can't kiss because that's gay.
Yeah.
And they're not gay.
Right.
And a guy can't wear a skirt.
Yeah.
Because that's feminine.
Yeah.
So he obviously has to be trans.
Yeah.
He can't wear a skirt. So there's also that thing there of, like, there's the gay people lamenting how many of them are, it's like, oh, you're trans, you're not gay, you're trans. It's like, no, it's just that gay young guy.
They're losing all their... So here's the thing about transgenderism versus anorexia. Why is one a disorder and one isn't? And you say, well, what do you say? You've got, I feel like my body's wrong. That's both of them, right?
Yes.
And you say, well, with anorexia, they harm themselves to fix that. It's like, oh yeah? And what do you do with transgender?
Yeah. Well, there's worries that in 20 years' time, we'll look back at this, because apparently there's a lot more money than I actually thought about doing these surgeries and, like, giving people these hormones.
That's late stage capitalism for you.
Yeah, but there is...
Actually, that is the legitimate criticism.
Yeah, there is a lot of money in doing all this stuff, and we don't really know we're doing, like, studies have been done, just listening to Benjamin Boyce. So he talked with one person, he's actually talking with another group of, so one person is talking about the effects of estrogen on himself and how he took it for years. Then the other one I want to listen to is he's talking to two people who... So one woman studied testosterone. I don't know if the other one's a detranser or not, but she just took testosterone to see what would happen. It's basically what it sounds like. And a lot of the long-term studies on is, like, a lot of trans people apparently get dementia and cancer in their 40s.
Yeah.
And 30s.
Yeah, cancer especially, yeah.
And it's like, what putting these hormones into you...
Have you ever seen a video of, not necessarily transgender surgery, but facial reconstruction surgery?
No.
If you want to do something very minor, like let's say fix your bone ridge on your eyebrow or something, you have to peel off the person's face. And then, because you need to stencil and draw where you want to cut, you have to drill the stencil into the person's skull to hold it in place, and then you can draw with the stencil, because you want it to be very precise. And then they just cut out part of your skull, and then they stick it back in with a piece of metal welded to it after they shaved it. And so you've got drill holes, and you've got metal, and you've got... And to do the whole thing, they had to peel off, like, a huge section of your face to get it in the first place.
I'm just thinking about... there's this...
Or, like, light jaw surgery. You have to take out part of the jaw. You just take out the jawbone, and you, like, shave it down a bit.
I was just thinking about... there's this chiropractor on YouTube. I've told you the story before, I think. Basically, this girl went to him about the problems, and she's a young girl talking about it. So, they're idly chatting. It's like, I think I'm going to get, like, plastic surgery to fix my nose because it's, like, slightly crooked. And the chiropractor just stares at her and is like, well, that's not really an issue. Like, you look just fine. But here, lie down on the table. And he puts his hands on her face and basically twists her nose into alignment. And he's like, if it comes out of alignment again, which if there is something wrong, that'll happen in about 2 years. Come back to me, I'll realign it. You don't need to do surgery.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, your cartilage just sets, like, you can like squish your nose bone and feel things. So it's like, yeah, your cartilage is just slightly offline, so I'll just...
So you know the story of the Dutch woman? Eddie Redmayne did a movie of her. You know how she died?
Weren't they trying to put ovaries in her?
Yeah, and her womb rotted.
Yeah.
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 Sepsis, basically.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not new, the idea of just trying something and hoping it works. Now, eventually, hopefully, someone will come up with something that works really well.
Yeah.
But
they're not working on that.
Yeah.
They're working on... So I actually looked up research on this.
Yeah.
So they're working on better ways to do surgeries and like the plasties and all that stuff. And if you want to find the actual research of genetically changing people, you have to go to the related but unrelated field of stem cell research, where they're doing completely different things, and they're not concerned with this.
Well, it's such a small amount of people.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be. It's growing.
Yeah, but they're not. It's just have knives and stuff.
But even if the technology was amazing, right?
Yeah.
We don't give anorexia liposuction.
No.
And liposuction is a fairly safe surgery.
Yeah.
So now it's not... They might be different things, but it seems to me you can draw a lot of parallels between, let's say, most cases. Maybe not all of them. There's people like Blair White who seem to realize they're making the best of a bad situation, and they don't know how to do it, but they're doing the best they can. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's... The main point is, Greeks weren't gay.